Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, December 8th, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll go ahead and get the meeting underway by reading our roll, please. Denise?
Councilmember Selberg.
Here.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
Erickson. Here. Jensen.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzer.
Here. All right, with us tonight to give our invocation is Tom Rooney. Tom's with Direct Prayer Line. And Tom, thanks for being here. You're a regular with us, and we always appreciate that. So thanks for making time tonight. I'd ask that you stand for our invocation before our meeting, and then stay standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Would you join me in prayer? Father, we thank you and we praise you. Lord, to quote one of our early leaders, Benjamin Franklin. Isn't it terrible when your mind goes like that? To quote one of our early leaders, Benjamin Franklin, Lord, that you are intimately involved in the affairs of man. And so, Father, as this body gathers to conduct the affairs of our city, we just pray for your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that you would bless them and help them, Lord, to really sense the leading of your Spirit, God, that they would have peace in their hearts about the things that they work together on. And Father, we pray for our city, that you would bless it, that your continued blessing would rest upon it, and God, that we would know your presence here in Sioux Falls. We thank you, Father, for your work among us, and we do trust you, Lord, to guide and direct the affairs of our city leaders. And Lord, I pray in Jesus' name that we would come together in unity, that we would be able to know that we are following after you and that your peace is among us. We give you glory, honor, and praise. We just invite your presence now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks for your help.
Hello, testing, we are on. Well, good evening, everybody. The goal of our superhero program is to highlight citizens in our community who go above and beyond. And I can think of no better person who fits that description than April Meyering. I've gotten to know April well over the past few years, and I cannot remember a time when seeing her when she wasn't smiling, and I'll bet if we could see behind the mask, yeah, there we go, she's laughing. And she's always cheerfully promoting something going on in the community. April gives countless hours to a number of organizations in the Sioux Empire. For example, she's been volunteering with the South Dakota chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for the past 3 years. She is a part of their core volunteers and is always willing to lend a helping hand to any task asked of her. April's connection to the cause has allowed her to turn heartache into action to help countless others by providing hope to those affected by suicide in our community. April recently accepted a position on the board and has helped in planning the 2020 Out of the Darkness Walk experience. She has helped turn this experience into something beautiful, as so many in our community need events like this now more than ever. April has also been a volunteer for our Chamber of Commerce for many years. She serves on the Executive Ambassador Committee, where she was recently the chair, and I can tell you for sure that's about a full-time job for that year stint. So she goes out of her way to promote the Chamber and its members, exhibits the highest degree of professionalism, knowledge, and integrity. And I know countless folks who have gotten to know her through this role who have come to count on her and call her friend, including me. Many folks sometimes look at volunteering for organizations with an attitude of, how can this benefit me? April is a person who looks at these commitments with the attitude of, what can I do to help you? It's inspiring, her smile and attitude are infectious, and let's hope in these challenging times, her infectious spirit is one that'll spread like wildfire throughout our community. I can think of no one more deserving of the City of Sioux Falls Superhero Award than April Meyerink. Congratulations.
Thanks, Councilor Selberg. Congratulations, April. Thanks for all you do for our community. There's people who have the mayor role by votes, and there's people who have the real mayor role by service in the community. And she is kind of a mayor, if you will, because she's all over this community and does a lot in our city. So, April, thanks a lot for being here tonight. All right, we'll move on. Our next item is our consent agenda. And to look for any changes or motions to that, Council.
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Jensen.
All right, we have a motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen on that. Is there any discussion here, Council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote on that, please.
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Item 10 is our regular agenda. Look for a motion on that.
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Jensen.
Motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen to approve our regular agenda. Any discussion on the regular agenda tonight, Council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote on that, please.
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzer.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Before we continue with our regular agenda, I'd like to review public input for agenda items. For regular agenda items, comments are limited to 3 minutes, unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input is limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration only. During the general public input portion of the meeting, comments will be no more than 3 minutes per person, and comments are limited to topics which do not involve agenda items appearing earlier in the agenda, as comments will have already been received for those items. So that being said, we'll move on to our next item, item 11.
Deferred from the meeting of Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, a resolution approving the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, pending motion to approve by Councilmember Jensen and seconded by Councilmember Starr. The sponsor is the mayor.
Good evening, Ryan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ryan Sage from the City Attorney's Office. I won't go into the contract details again this week. We're here if there's any questions to be asked. At this point, we'd ask for your support and approval of this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item deferred from our last meeting? Evening.
Good evening. Cooper Caraway, President, South Dakota State Federation of Labor. I served as the union representative for the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, Local 519, during the recent collective bargaining negotiations with the City of Sioux Falls. AFSCME Local 519 represents all Sioux Falls City employees who are not management, police, or fire. I have to say that our membership ratified this contract already. Our membership voted overwhelmingly to ratify this contract. We encourage you to do the same thing. However, I do have to point out that I was also the representative several years ago when we negotiated our last contract. And several years ago, it only took us 4 negotiation sessions to come to a complete agreement. It took us 2 sessions to agree on non-economic issues. It took us 2 other meetings to agree on economic issues. This time around, it was much more difficult, much more arduous. It took us over 5 meetings to even agree on any non-economic issues. Usually non-economics are things that don't have a financial impact on the city. Those are quickly agreed to, or we quickly come to a resolution. But this past session was a bit like pulling teeth. Moving forward, it's in the employees and the city's best interest for these negotiations to go smoothly. I've seen them go smoothly before. I know they can. Moving forward, it would be immensely helpful if a representative from the city council directly or a staffer or representative from the office of the mayor would sit in and be party to these negotiations. We believe that when there's a city council member or a representative from the mayor's office, it makes the negotiations go much smoother, and we think we would have reached an agreement in about half the time that we ended up reaching. Regardless, we encourage you to vote yes, as our membership has, and we look forward to continuing a relationship based on cooperation and solidarity. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cooper. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? All right, council, I'll turn it back over to you guys for any discussion. Again, we already have a pending action on the floor to approve this item. Discussion amongst the council here. Councilor Erickson.
I have a question for either Ryan Sage or Bill O'Toole, whoever's here. I was listening to the governor's address today, and in that address, the COLA for state employees is 2.4%. And so I'm curious where or how the 1% came up with, or is that what we'll renegotiate possibly in the future, or how does that look and work?
Certainly. So when we get into the bargaining and that, the cost of living is for an inflationary increase. We don't look at market competitiveness with the cost of living increase. We look at inflation. And based on everything the Federal Reserve and I guess federal economic folks have indicated, 1% is about where that inflationary mark is. It's trending a little higher, a little lower at times month to month, but that's essentially where we're at for the year.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And a question was posed to me earlier today, and so I thought I would ask, just making sure I have clarification. So thank you for that, and thanks for being here.
Other discussion amongst the council on this item?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. I'm not sure who it would be for, either Mr. O'Toole or Ryan. I'm curious, now that our 3 bargaining units have received their contracts, and I'm so excited to at least not be forcing a contract on anyone, that we've been able to come to an agreement with each one of the groups. How much of a raise, or what are we doing for the other employees that aren't covered by these 3 bargaining units?
Thank you, Councilor. I'll invite Human Resource Director Bill O'Toole here. Good evening, Bill.
Council Bill O'Toole, Director of Human Resources. As it pertains to the other employee groups not represented by a collective bargaining agreement, they will be receiving the same cost of living increase as the AFSCME group.
How is that determined?
Utilizing the same metrics, the consumer price index for all urban areas, we track that very closely, and that's what guides our decisions as it relates to inflationary adjustments.
My concern is that it wasn't in the budget. We just passed a budget a short time ago, and where is that money coming from?
The current appropriations, Councilor, there's no need to do any sort of amendment or adjustment. It can be covered with the adopted budget. There were some changes as it relates to our estimates regarding health insurance premium costs that allowed us a little flexibility in that regard.
But doesn't the council approve the budget?
Yes.
So I guess my question is then, who made the determination to go forward with this without talking to the council?
Council, it's simply part of the process we're utilizing right now and before you.
So we don't have a say in the determination if we wanted to do 2%.
honest. I guess I'm not sure you're looking for any advice from me on how that should happen, Counselor. I'm not sure I can answer that question.
Ryan, you want to speak to
Well,
the budget that was
My
passed?
point was is that you didn't ask us for advice, so I guess I get both sides of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on this? Counselor Brecky?
My question's for Bill O'Toole. Director O'Toole, the question I have is, initially, we were under the understanding that ASME was not going to be able to have an increase this year. I'm glad that they have. I'm glad that the funds were available, that worked out that they could. Of course, we've already spoken about, the fact that we weren't made aware of it in advance of last week's meeting. We've had a week to figure it all out, and I'm very supportive of it. My concern is, in this round of negotiations, there's been a really large discrepancy in the amount of salary increases that each of the units are getting. And that's fairly uncommon, and it's usually, when that happens with the city, it's driven by the fact that there's been some sort of a salary study which would indicate that one group is out of whack and there needs to be adjustments made to do that. Are we in line for, AFSCME is receiving significantly less than the other two units. And we were told that it's because, that their jobs and their positions right now are are competitive from a market, analysis. Are we, where are we at in looking at a salary study again? Do we need to have a salary study again? And are we, where is that in the future? Usually we just do it regularly. I'm just wondering, looking down the road, if we're that far out of whack with police and fire, that we're giving the kinds of raises that we did them, and ASME's meeting the market rate, it would just seem to me that we must be getting close to needing a salary study again. So where are we at with that?
You're right, Counselor. The city is committed. Every 8 to 10 years, we do a comprehensive compensation and benefit study for a variety of positions throughout the city of Sioux Falls. We also engage in collective bargaining on a regular basis, collect salary data. I would tell you that 2018 was not that long ago. That informed us quite well with respect to a massive look at a lot of our positions across the city of Sioux Falls. Uniqueness with respect to police and fire, those markets can move a little bit quicker, and we need to respond to those. We also look at employment data, so we know how our hiring is going, how complex or difficult may be to get police officers and firefighters, and you make moves based on that. From an inflationary standpoint, when we started bargaining early in the year, inflation was at a different level than it was. It moved against us, if you will, and we were able to make some adjustments at the end. But we're committed to doing, like I said, compensation and benefit studies on a regular basis. We're watching the market closely. If there's a need to move, we make those moves. We've done them repeatedly, and we'll continue to do so to ensure that our ability to attract and retain employees is there.
So the last one, did I hear you say the last one was in 2018?
Correct.
So we wouldn't be looking at one right away, but...
No.
Okay, so there's not, so it would be a few more. So you're just going to be kind of going year by year, looking at your regular...
And engaging in the collective bargaining process. We'll look at salary surveys, we'll collect data. We hear from the bargaining groups as well, and we look at those when there's a need to.
Okay.
And like I said, we're also able to rely on what we're seeing on the employment side in terms of our ability to attract and retain.
Thank you.
Other discussion or questions, council, on this item? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson? Yes. Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes. All right, that item passes 8-0. Item 12, please.
First reading an emergency ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota to require face covering in an indoor public place where 6-foot social distancing cannot be achieved. Recommendations is to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, December 15, 2020, and the sponsors are Council Members Sale and Kylie.
Councilor Kylie, the floor is yours on this.
Thank you very much. This proposal would extend the mask mandate that's currently in place through the 1st of January to March 13th. So it would extend it 72 days beyond what is currently in place. All the other language in the ordinance is exactly as it was or as it is presently. That's it.
All right, thank you, Counselor. At this time, I'd open up to public input. Anyone who would like to speak on this item, please come forward.
This is 3 minutes or 5?
3.
I'll have to talk fast. Thank you, counselors, for keeping Sioux Falls beautiful. We do appreciate your service.
State your name.
Did you get the, I'm sorry, Laura Hubble from Sioux Falls. And I hope that you got the package that was presented to you today about our group. Basically, we are concerned about any violations of state laws and of ordinances. South Dakota Codified Law 2013-23 is about public accommodations and unfair or discriminatory practices. It says, paraphrased, it shall be an unfair or discriminatory practice for any person providing public accommodations to refuse any person access to the use of and benefit from services and facilities because of race, color, creed, religion, or disability. That comes from our South Dakota Civil Rights Law 2013-1, which defines public accommodations as any space, establishment, or facility that offers services, facilities, or goods to the general public for a fee. This excludes private clubs, except where the private club also offers services to the general public. Unfair or discriminatory practices is paraphrased as any act or any attempted act which because of race, creed, religion, or disability, which denies or if accomplished would deny a person the benefit of a public accommodation. We also have a federal law, which I won't read now. But at this point, I want to explain by process of elimination that mask mandates are a religion, specifically if they are unscientific. They are, as viruses are 1/10 of a micron in size, and average clear passages in the common masks are between 70 and 450 microns. This means if a virus was about an inch long, the openings in a mask would be between 80 to 400 feet. And even if the virus was contained in an aerosol, it would still easily pass through most masks because aerosols are only about 90 microns. Recall holes in a mask can be up to 450 microns in diameter. Then, masks can be contaminated by bacteria, which are 1,000 times bigger than viruses. And masks absolutely harbor huge mold spores that contaminate and possibly injure the person wearing it. In other words, masks are filthy and they are a biohazard. So I can only deduct that masks are a religious garb. And being a Christian, I do not subscribe to the religions of others. As a Christian, I am made in the image of God, and in Christianity, we have an evil adversary that hates anything made in God's image, and they wish to cover, muzzle, dehumanize, and censor that which God loves. All this is what a mask will do to the person who wears one. So let's look at our civil rights. Religious discrimination. It is defined as treating someone unfavorably because of his religious beliefs.
Thanks, Laura.
I'm sorry, I thought it was a little bit longer.
Thank you.
You do have a package, right?
I don't know about a packet.
She has hers, so. These packages will be given to
Thank you, Laura.
the police officers also.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Come on forward.
Hello, Juan Vargas, Sioux Falls. I am a business owner here in town, and I've been up here before for this same issue, and I just need to come up here and say something because it just seems like the officials will just kind of do whatever they feel like. I want to make it known that there are people that are not for this in the community. I hope people are watching. I know some people know me. And this is a call to men to stand up and speak out and say something and try to change things that we can, and not just lay over and let these things run us over all the time. I've watched Mayor Tinhaken, change his mind between 1 and 3 days. One time he said, yes, I've looked at these things. I've looked at communities, one with a mandate, one without. It makes no difference. You said that yourself, out of your mouth. You said that. It's recorded. And then, 3, 4 days later, you change your mind. So now all of a sudden it makes a difference from those days. What changed other than the language? Because there was no, now there was no, there would be no penalties. And that's, there was, it's still the effectiveness did not change. That was the point. That's the point of these things. I'm really worried. I am a Christian, and I'm really worried about this thing getting its hands deeper and deeper into our liberties. I am worried about my church. You see other states, this is how it goes. It goes first for a little while, and then for a little longer, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to stop meeting, and then, everybody's fined, and then churches are fined, and it goes just further and further. We need to stop this before it gets any further. It does not help people. It does not save lives. I don't want to bring up a bunch of scientific data because you've heard it all. And it's not me. I don't have a degree, but these people do. They're scientists. They're doctors. I know you have the opposition, but these guys have degrees also. They are doctors. They are real doctors. So I just don't know why you're letting this happen. We count on you to protect more our liberties and more our freedom and more our country and the structure, the thing. This is what we have. This is what we love. This is what we need to protect. And it's time for men to stand up and do the right thing. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Good evening.
Amy Willis, naturopath and president of the Healthy Americans of South Dakota. Several weeks ago, many of us knowledgeable citizens of Sioux Falls presented to you the unlawful and needless ordinance of enforcing masks. Some of the facts presented were there are no reliable studies showing the effectiveness of masks preventing viral infection. The fact that masks harbor pathogens and increase the risk of infection. The fact that masks are detrimental to our health and that they cause high levels of CO2 and is against common OSHA regulations. The fact that this virus is not dangerous and that 99.9% survival rate. The fact that the testing for coronavirus 19 is flawed and that 80% are false positives. Studies were presented showing that where masks were enforced, cases of COVID increased. The fact that this ordinance violates civil law and our Constitution. Yet, this unlawful ordinance passed. Therefore, I submit to you that COVID-19 is a hoax. One definition of a hoax is a humorous or malicious deception. Merriam-Webster defines it as something accepted or established by fraud or fabrication. Top pathologist Dr. Hodgkinson told Canadian government officials in Alberta during a phone conference that the coronavirus pandemic is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on an unsuspecting public. Hodgkinson, who is the CEO of a biotech company that makes COVID tests, says, there is utterly unfounded public hysteria driven by the media and politicians. We are seeing politics playing medicine, and that is a very dangerous game. Positive tests show that do not mean a clinical infection, he says. He says all testing should stop because the false numbers they produce are driving public hysteria. Hopkinson says the risk of death for people under the age of 65 is 1 in 300,000, and it is outrageous to shut down society for it is merely just another bad flu. There is a federal law against conducting or promoting a hoax. Title 18 U.S. Code 1038, falsifying misleading information about biological hazards and conducting hoaxes. This law is enforced by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, and the penalty is life in prison.
You don't have to yell, ma'am. Just you can.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm just going fast. The hoax here is that there is no emergency, yet an emergency has been declared. I will now read, I don't have time to read this, South Dakota Codified Law 34-48A-1. The definition of an emergency and disaster, I'm sure you know it. At the end it says, to protect the public, property, public health and safety, or to avert or lessen the threat of a disaster. I state there is no threat of a disaster. The data we presented substantiates this fact. There's another federal law, Title 18, Code 1040, which is fraud connected to major disasters or emergency benefits, declaring an emergency in order to get money, which is fraudulent. The penalty here is 30 years in prison.
Tonight. Thank you.
I want you to know that
Thank
we're
you.
working at state level as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good evening, ma'am.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I just got ridiculed coming in here. My 5-year-old.
You state your name. That's all right.
Nicole, I'm here in Sioux Falls. Lived here my whole life.
What's your last name, Nicole?
Hanson, S-O-N.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
First of all, I don't think anybody denies that COVID is here. Nobody doesn't think that we have this illness going around, okay? These masks are tearing us apart as human beings. My 5-year-old comes home crying because she can't sit by her friends on the carpet like she's in kindergarten. This is what we're doing to our children. I'm so sorry.
All right, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Take your time.
So she had worn a mask, and we are not. I have a health condition. I have anxiety attacks. I have panic attacks. The second I put the masks on, I have an instant panic attack. My doctor will not help me. I'm so disappointed in our healthcare system. I've been going to the same hospital since I was born. My doctor won't help me. They won't do anything about it. So I go to the stores because I have a child to feed and bills to pay. I can't go in the stores without getting ridiculed. Nobody knows what anybody else is going through or what has happened in somebody else's life and what affects them in their life. I love people. I'm so sorry. My grandma has Alzheimer's. We haven't been able to see her. Our old people in these homes are not dying from COVID. They're dying because we cannot hug them. We have to sit with them. She has Alzheimer's, so we don't explain. She has to wear a mask. She doesn't know why. She doesn't understand. You can't hug her. You can't hold her. It's killing us as people. It is literally tearing us apart as human beings. I'm sorry, but I would rather get COVID and survive because it is the same death rate as the flu. I'm sorry to everybody. I am not an insensitive person, but people pass. That is life. Any life lost is terrible. It's terrible. But it's just tearing us apart as people, and it's not helping anything. States beside us with mask mandates, their cases are up. Their cases are up. Now it's flu season. We're all inside. We're all hanging out together. Where's the flu? Anybody? It's all just COVID now. It's not right. It's not right. And we can be safe without doing this. We can be safe.
Thanks. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Tim Stanga. Again, I'm going to reiterate, back in July, told you cases were going to go up because of flu season. Did you listen? Did the city listen? No. We're looking at a first reading, an emergency ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota to require face coverings in an indoor public place where 6-foot social distancing cannot be achieved. 9 out of 10 people are sitting right behind me, but yet we still have 6 foot in between them. Are we not contradicting what we're doing here? What are you even going to be voting on? This doesn't say how many days you're going to put it out to. They don't say what month you're going to put it off to. They absolutely say nothing other than what they have already in writing. You guys, it's all panic. You guys are tearing people apart. I got a friend of mine that's been sitting in his basement for 9 months. 9 months he can't get his life back. You can't get 9 months back out of your life. How many people have really died with COVID in South Dakota? Just COVID. Anybody? Maybe our health department, our health director can tell us that, because you know something, she doesn't know either. If you don't believe the people that are giving you the information, absolutely the people of Sioux Falls are not going to listen to you. And right now, the people that are coming out, COVID, and we got COVID, oh, we got another 100 COVID cases. Who really cares? People are tired of listening to COVID because why? They know the cases are going to go up. But everybody I deal with that had COVID, it's the same symptoms. Headache, body aches. 2 days later, they're fine, but they got to sit at home for 10 to 12 days. Why? You got some doctors that are telling people that if they're around somebody that has COVID, just go ahead and go to work. We'll see if this person does have COVID. And if she does, then maybe you should go get tested. But yet that person's running around town for 3-4 days before the test even comes out. We don't even have the doctors on the same page. So we're going to come in with this ordinance. Maybe what you should do is figure out how many days you're going to extend it to, and maybe let the public know so we can come back up here and talk about it again.
All right, thank you. Please come forward, sir. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Stephen Ciano. I've been disabled out of the Navy, got an early discharge in '78 as a result of PTSD compounding Asperger's, and this was clear in my medical record, and medical and legal people have been, and administrative people have been concealing it since. That goes for the present situation, and that's...
Steve, is this related to the mask mandate?
Oh, yes,
okay.
Definitely. And I read on a 12th grade level in 6th grade. I skipped a couple times in school. I qualified for everything before my disability. Well, we can't trust people in the medical field and mental health and physical health field when they lie to us, when they misrepresent, and this is a hoax. I'm not saying there's no disease out there. And I presented, I think it was in May, about how properly people can handle this, not with a mask, but with proper supplementation, proper positioning, and a belief in a higher power. Go for it. What is the higher power's will should be respected. If you were true believers, rather than say you believe people, you would go along with this. And your public health people should be promoting proper education rather than scare tactics, which cause people to turn against each other, as I heard that 2 of your counselors and myself have been threatened because of our not wearing masks, when we pose no considerable threat to anyone, no known threat. And by the way, I will share with you now that the reason I know so well how to get through this is I had it in March. And I dealt with it just that way. So just like Kelby Krabenhoff, why should I be told I have to wear a mask? And I do, by the way, have an excuse from a psychiatrist, but I still have no access at present to medical care, so I'm being harmed by, arguably, as are others, by their being denied access to the system and being pitted against each other, having people put against them. There's a lot of money involved, as I said last time, going billions of dollars going to Big Pharma, going to the hospitals. Why do you think you got your people promoting this?
Thanks, Stephen.
We're looking for a vaccine as a savior.
Stephen, appreciate it.
When your people claim to believe in
Stephen.
Jesus as the savior.
Yep, thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Riffle, an active advocate for the homeless and displaced persons downtown. I'm an acting CEO, Director with Mid-America Advocates. One thing I do see a lot here is nothing but lies, deceiving, deluding. You name it, you got it. You know, I'm around those people downtown every day, every night. And you know what they did downtown? They stuck into the hunkered down into the shelters. Well, I know one shelter specifically, actually I know a few, but we'll take one. They had COVID in there.
Is this about the mask ordinance?
Pardon me?
Is this about the mask ordinance?
Yes, they had COVID in there, and the girl wore her masks and everything. But she caught COVID. So they put her in another place for like 2 weeks. She was supposed to be free of COVID. Guess where they put her? Right back where she came from. Now, if that's not calling the kettle black. So what I'm saying here is, I have a son also in the Lifescape. I haven't been able to see my son. My son doesn't understand what's going on around here. But y'all don't care about that. All I see is money, jokes. You think it's funny. This isn't funny no more. This COVID thing's been out here since before I was born. Check it out. The doctors that did it have all been murdered. Check it out. Then you have another doctor saying, oh, we got a cure. Right away, you got a cure for laundry soap, but you don't have a cure for the COVID? Oh, but let's jack it all up as COVID. It's not even a flu anymore. I'm sick of the lies. I'd like you all to get on the same page. Get your boats in the same dock. Get them in line right like the military do. Get serious about it. It's no joke. And it's disrupting our families, and I don't like it. I want to see my son. My son is 50 years old with the mentality of a 10 to 11-year-old. He don't know what's going on. In the home where he's at, they broke his ankle and everything else. I can't even go claim anything for my son. But yet I still can't see my son. He fell out of his bed the other day. Do I get right to see my son and check him over? Heck no. I can't get in there. This is my son, like that girl in the picture and like the boy in the picture. They were my kids. Think how I feel. And if you want to keep wearing your mask, go ahead. But I've also seen cowboys with sores around their mouth from wearing them when they're bronco riding. So take your pick. Good night.
All right, anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? Good evening, sir.
Howdy, my name's Steve Johnson. I've been here a few times. When we were talking about the mandate the first time, Mayor Tenkenken, you said that in Sioux Falls we have a high level of mask worn, and the mandate will only show a small increase of compliance. Did you do a scientific study to change those numbers that I heard? I haven't heard of anything. CDC numbers and graphs show a turn downward since the middle of November, before the mask mandate. So can you explain why your numbers, when the mandate was put into place, was different than what the CDC is talking about? You told us January 1, 2021 was the end of the mask mandate, unless something changed. What changed? Is it the numbers? The numbers have been coming down, or the numbers have been going up. Not sure, because we haven't heard anything. Now, the last time we had this mask mandate come up, I sent an email to 7 of the council members here. I got one reply, Mr. Neitzert, and he had answers. Some of those he didn't have answers for because he's not a medical professional or a lawyer. But I'm wondering why I didn't get replies from others. It's because you had no facts to base your claims? All you had was your feelings that you need to do something. So now we're going to maybe pass another mask mandate. What is the number that's going to trigger the end of it? Is it the number of deaths? Is it the number of cases? Is it the number of hospitalizations? That should be right up front. What's the next step? If the mask doesn't work, if it's not the big cure that you claim it to be, what's the next step? Face shields, shutdowns for businesses, stay-at-home orders. maybe a vaccine mandate. Now, you claim to be concerned with our health. Our community, state, and nation are suffering from lung diseases. When are you going to quit selling tobacco in this town? Alcoholism. When are you going to ban alcohol sales? Obesity. When are you going to mandate some exercise and healthy living? Teen pregnancies. Maybe you can mandate sterilization, temporary, for all boys and girls from age 12 to 21. That would take care of that. STDs. I'm not sure how you're going to fix that one. Old people fall down and die. They hit their heads. My mother-in-law, fell down, hit their head, died. Maybe you should mandate helmets for people 65 and older. There's a lot of health issues that we're facing. This is not the one that's killing everybody. It's the 6th leading cause. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? Last call. Please come up if you're ready. If anyone else is ready, you can go ahead and line up behind the podium here, and we'll keep it rolling. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kelly Bradshaw, and I never thought in my lifetime I would ever be speaking in public. I don't like doing that. First, I'm going to say it's refreshing to hear people speak without a mask on their face. I love to hear the voices, the passion. I guess what I really want to know, and I've emailed you guys a couple of times, respectfully. I've gotten a reply from one of you on one email. But my question is, you're representatives of the people. And I don't know by show of hands how many of you have been asked by the people who represent you how you feel. I've not been contacted. The only time I hear from a lot of people in government, local, is when I get the pretty postcards every 2 to 4 years when you're up for re-election, and I see pictures of families and, you know, I'm born and raised in South Dakota. I love this. It's the people. That's what it's about. And I'm sad for you. I have to imagine that if you could go back 2 years and say, hey, in retrospect, would you like to be on city council in 2020? I would bet a lot of you would say, not only no, but heck no. So I appreciate the position you're in, but all I'm asking, I'm imploring for our country, for our people, for the city of Sioux Falls. I don't know what you're all going through, but please listen to the people. People of South Dakota we're good people. We are responsible people. People want to move here. We believe in God, country, family. And I just ask that you listen to the people. I personally resent, in some ways, having to come up here, and I feel like I am on trial, and I have to present my case, and that's not what it's about. This building is mine. You guys all work for us. We elected you. We trusted you to represent us. But I don't think any of you have reached out to your constituents. And I guess that's really all I want to say. God bless America. And I hope you do the right thing.
Thank you, Kelly. Come on up, Mike. Good evening.
Residents of Sioux Falls, have we, before we go and pass this second mandate, have you guys done any research on how the first one is working? You had the mayor had the resolution, and then we had the first installment of the mandate. Have you as the mayor, have any talk within the businesses and how the businesses have been managing their policies, and has it been working to the point where do we need a mandate the second time? And two, how are you doing on the public property end of it? Do you see a big increase of people choosing not to wear masks or wearing masks on public property? That would be a question I would ask Greg or anybody that bring forward. I mean, have we done any research on how businesses have been managing their policies, and if we had any issues with that before we go along for a second time. So that's just a few thoughts I thought.
All right, thank you, Mike. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? All right, seeing no more public input, we'll look for a motion, then we'll move into our discussion amongst the council here.
Move to approve. Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Kylie and seconded by Sale. That's to set a date of second reading for next week, the 15th. Discussion amongst the council. Councilor Neitzer, go ahead.
I want to be first out of the gate to say to Nicole that I haven't been so moved or proud of a public input speaker in quite a long time. I thought that was, you spoke for thousands of people, and it took a lot of courage, and so thank you for doing that. Yep, absolutely. And that's been one of my concerns with this, is the division it creates, and as I've said in the past, people don't wear a sign that says what their history is, and I don't know your history. So it's unfortunate when we have that. Just a couple of thoughts, because we continue to talk about this over and over, and you're probably getting sick of hearing it. I first want to say that I do, when we talked about this the last time, I used a term about what I wanted to do to the current ordinance, or the previous ordinance, and I want to apologize to the sponsors of that ordinance and to the supporters, because in my passion, I used a term that I wish I would not have used. You know, when you're in the hot mic, sometimes you say things that you wish you could pull back. So publicly, I'm just apologizing for the use of that particular term. The other thing I want to say is that all of us on both sides of this issue continue to struggle with this. Yes, I mean, I'm not going to complain. You don't know what you're signing up for. Nobody ever expected this, but we ran to lead, and that's what we're doing. This is one of those things that we struggle with, no matter what side we're on this. And the thing is, no matter which side you fall on this, you get a lot of passionate input. So I just want to recognize that we all struggle with this, and we're trying the best we can. Now, with respect and deference to my colleagues that disagree with me on this, just a couple thoughts. I'm watching the entire country surge. We're hitting grim death tolls. And I see lockdowns, I see mask mandates that have gone on for months on end, and you have absolutely draconian mandates, yet in those states, they're also hitting these milestones. I don't see the difference. I think we all obviously want to do something, we want to save lives, but I think we're all overestimating, apparently, our power to control this virus with government intervention. And I also am concerned about, and Nicole brought this up, there is the silent victim in this, and that is the millions of people who are locked up in nursing homes, not getting visits, the children being damaged from their education being not what it should be. I've seen it myself with my daughter. All of those collateral effects, all of the mental health issues, I've dealt with that myself in the past with anxiety. And it's crippling. And we don't count the costs, I don't think. And I don't think it's hard to, so it's hard to get that balance. I just feel like, with all deference, I know we're all struggling with this, I just feel like, and this is why I'm continuing with my position, that we're going to look back in about 5 years, maybe 10 years, and we're going to regret the deprivation of liberty and what we've done to people, and that we're going to feel like the intervention that we did as much damage, if not more damage. And so that's what I continue to struggle with, that giving up liberty for perceived security, and I think it is perceived security. I know we're trying to do the right thing, but I just don't see the numbers just make a difference, and there's just so much collateral impacts And I just hope we can, whatever decision we make as public, we can just continue to respect each other. And when you see somebody in public, please don't prejudge and make assumptions. Keep your distance if that's what you need to do. And remember, you don't know somebody's history. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Other discussion, Council, on the motion to send this to a second reading? Any discussion on the phone? All right, hearing none, we will take a vote on this, please.
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr, Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
No.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
No.
Starr,
Yes.
All right, that item passes 6-2. Next item, please.
Item 13 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement between the city of Sioux Falls and the Wagner Arboretum Society for the management of the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum and East Sioux Falls Historic Site, including the Mabel and Judy Jasper Educational Center, the Jasper Family Gardens, and all other amenities consistent with the master plan.
Good evening, Jackie.
Hi, good evening. Jackie Nelson, Parks and Recreation Administrative Manager, here to talk to you tonight about the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum and East Historic Site Management Agreement.
Jackie, will you lift those mics up a little bit? They kind of got pushed down on you a little bit. There you go. Thank you. Yep.
All right. So our current agreement with the Wagner Arboretum Society expires at the end of the year, so on December 31st. It currently does not contain an extension. Therefore, we're coming to you tonight for another one-year agreement or a one-year term. And actually, that should say January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. The reason for the one-year agreement versus a longer term would be they are currently going through some leadership transitions, as well as just the unique business year that we've had. This agreement, the one-year term, has been approved by the Arboretum Board with limited updates. So the updates that have been made for this new term are just two. One is in Section 6 under improvements. And ultimately it says that whenever city funds are being used, it just needs to follow what's within Section 13 of the agreement or the budget section. It also talks about if city funding is not being used, it still needs to be pre-approved by the city. The other update within this new term would be under Exhibit A, Social Society Responsibilities, and that's in regard to special events. So if there's a special event at the Arboretum, they just need to work with the city to make sure everyone is clear and understands who's responsible for which activities. So with those two minor updates to the agreement, as I mentioned, the Arboretum Board approved on October 8th. We did present this same presentation November 10th to City Council. The Park Board did approve on November 19th, and then I'm here tonight for the resolution. This term then would go into effect January 1st, 2021. I do have Mike Cooper here with me to help answer any questions. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item tonight?
One question, and hopefully, I can get an answer on this one. What kind of maintenance program do we have on this building that we have out at this Mary Jo Arboretum? Because if it's going to be another building that we're going to just let fall apart, and then we decide that we have to tear it down, I think it's time that the public realizes what kind of a maintenance program we do have on our city's buildings. And the citizens should know that they are being maintained, and that if they need maintenance, that the maintenance is going to be done on these buildings.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this one tonight? All right, councilors, do you have any questions for Jackie? Or I would also point out Mike is here. Mike, as many of you know, our former director of parks and of planning, has spending part of his retirement years as our interim director there, so I just want to thank Mike for the role you're playing at the Arboretum right now. So Mike is here for questions as well. So council, any questions on this? All right, look for
approval.
For a motion. We got a motion by Selberg,
Second, Neitzer.
seconded by Councilor Neitzer. Is there discussion, councilors, on this item? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star? Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Hiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We'll move on to our next item.
Item 14 is a resolution declaring certain real property of the city surplus and authorizing the demolition thereof. Tuthill House and Sakin House, sponsors the mayor.
Good evening, Kelby.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Kelby Maris with Parks and Recreation. The resolution before you tonight will declare surplus and allow the demolition of 3 different structures within the park system. The Tuthill Park House and detached garage at Tuthill Park, and the Sakin House at Great Bear Park. We'll start by letting you know that there are very passionate people on both sides of this issue, as it relates especially to the Tuthill Park House. The house was donated to the city by Arthur and Dot Tuthill in 1953, along with other structures in the first 40 acres of what is now Tuthill Park. The Tuthills were the 4th owners of this house, and it was their summer home. In 1993, the city and the department did renovations on this house. The renovations included an accessible entry and restroom. They closed in the covered porch, had new doors, new windows, updated the electrical on the inside of the house, which included adding fluorescent lighting on the first floor of the house, and added a deck that is 30 feet by 32 feet. This work was completed by park crews, and it was after these renovations that the house was used as an event space for reservations. I want to make sure that you are aware that this house is not falling down. It is structurally sound. The current conditions of the house and the needs that it has have existed since before September of 2019, and that'll become important here later. But the house needs a new roof, new siding, exterior doors, windows, and a new HVAC system. The house does also have limited functionality. It is only 800 square feet. The renovations that were completed in 1993 closed off the upstairs, so only the first floor is accessible for users. The anticipated cost for this project range from $120,000 to $250,000, and these projects need to take place all at once, essentially because the siding is asbestos siding for the most part in this house. And as we get into each one of these projects, flashing with the roofing, window and door frames that need to be replaced, and an HVAC system that would put new penetrations through the siding for fresh air and for exhaust. This siding that is on the house cannot be cut and it cannot be penetrated through due to EPA regulations because of the asbestos. This would require a formal bid process because of the dollar amount. That formal bid process would include a professional design, specifications of not only the building products or the building products to be used, but also the methods in which the construction would be conducted, and bid specifications and documents completed by the consultant. This has been an internal budget discussion for some time. It does not mean that the house has been neglected by any stretch. It actually has been very well maintained by the people that maintain the park system. The wide discrepancy in the numbers that you see from the 120,000 to 250,000 can easily be explained by the scope of the project. As you may remember from the informational meeting, the $120,000 estimate is from a local contractor who did very little to no investigation on the house and provided square foot pricing. That $120,000 also includes more than $30,000 in consultant fees for an architect. The $250,000 estimate came from a local architect, and then to go deeper into the scope of work, when the asbestos siding is abated and removed from this house, we do know that there is other siding underneath of this because of the way the current siding on the outside and the window frames line up. Very little space there, so that leads us to believe that there is siding underneath of this. But what we don't know is how this siding was attached to the siding below. So we don't know if it was furred over the top, if the siding was cut so that that furring could be put into place. So really, until we start removing siding, we don't know exactly what we're in for. Also with the roof, there's 2 layers of asphalt shingles that would need to be removed. We have had an engineer instruct us that we are likely to remove and replace more than 25% of the roof sheeting. There is a metal roof that was installed a few months ago over the top of this. That metal roof is quite literally a Band-Aid. It was put over the top of these asphalt shingles simply to keep the structure watertight. I'd mentioned September of 2019 earlier. The house was damaged during the 2019 windstorms. Insurance proceeds are not available because of the per event deductible that the city has for wind and hail. So all the damage done by the tornadoes and during that windstorm, all of the damage to our structures would have had to exceed the deductible, and this deductible exceeds the insured value of this house. And we did not see enough damage across the entire city as far as city buildings go for that deductible to be reached. To give you an idea of the impact that the trees had when they fell over onto the house, the picture on the left is tree branches that penetrated through the roof and into one of the rooms in the 2nd floor of the building. The middle picture is a drywall tape joint that paint was popped off of when the trees hit the house, giving you some idea of the force in which the trees hit the house. And then on the right, the picture on the right just shows some additional damage that was done by the trees. So the potential repair costs rival the value of the structure, and it does have limited functionality, as I mentioned, with only 800 square feet. We believe this is not a good investment, and that any investment would be best served in other improvements. Research done by Parks and Recreation and the City Attorney's Office has determined that there are no deed restrictions related to this house. And it's for these reasons that staff recommends removal of the house and detached garage. This is, we have been, of course, before the informational meeting, or its park board meeting on the 18th of November, and had in October we had a neighborhood meeting. So we've received a lot of input from the community on both sides, and some of the input that we have received that's against our recommendation is that this is only being considered at the request of a few new neighbors. And I can tell you that that is not the case. We've had this conversation for a long time, and for longer than they've lived in their houses and since they moved in. And as I'd mentioned, the 2019 windstorms. It is an affordable venue that has provided a space for memorial events. It's quaint, historic. Upkeep has not been addressed for some time. Rental revenue should have been put aside for maintenance projects. It's unique, it's a lack of notice, and it does not honor the gift. Again, these are comments that we've heard from the public. Some of the things that we've heard on the other side that support the recommendation is that it does comply with the deed restrictions. The house has limited functionality. Ongoing maintenance costs, including these projects, would have to happen again. So asphalt shingles don't last forever, and would have to be re-roofed at some point. House is not on the national, or is not on a historical registry. Was not identified as a priority investment based on the priority investment ratings in the comprehensive plan that included a citizen survey. Not a good investment of taxpayer dollars, and a desire for other park improvements. So the question has been asked a few times is what could replace the house? What would go in its space? Some of the ideas that we've talked about is it could be additional green space. We could expand the gardens into this area. A larger deck could be constructed that would overlook the gardens. It could be a concrete area that would support user-arranged and funded canopies to support their events, or a shade structure similar to the one that was constructed at the wedding garden at Sherman Park. I've talked a few times about the deed restrictions, and the deed restrictions were clearly outlined in the deed, in the gift of the property that included the structures, including the house. The property was to be used for parks and recreation purposes only, and to be named Tuthill Park. There's to be no alcohol, no gambling, racing, lottery, or game of chance, no zoo, dance hall, pavilion, or nightclub. The delphinium flowers in the flower garden shall be maintained. No concessions, concession stand beyond the hilltop, and that the Tuthills reserve the right to remove the cottage dwelling on the northeast side of the gardens. This house sits on the southwest side of the gardens. Corn crib, a storage shed, and a cattle shed, all at their convenience. There are many other indoor affordable venues throughout the park system. The Arboretum, the Great Plains Zoo, the Great Bear Chalet, Overlook Cafe, clubhouses at Prairie Green and Elmwood golf courses, the Midco Aquatic Center, our community centers are all good, affordable indoor venues for memorable events. Additional outdoor venues throughout the park system. The gardens that I mentioned at Sherman Park, McKinnon Park Sunken Gardens, the Japanese Gardens at Terrace Park, Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum, the Great Bear Chalet, the zoo, and various park shelters across our park system. There's been some conversation about the process that we've used to get us to this point. Neighborhood meeting was held at Prairie Green Golf Course on the 28th of October. We mailed out 574 postcard invitations to the area that you can see on the map. The yellow dots are the residents that received the invitation. The red stars are the residents that showed up to the meeting. We actually had very great attendance for a neighborhood meeting where 28 people attended the neighborhood meeting, 2 of which were from outside the area. We were before you in November on the 10th at an informational meeting, and again at the Parks and Recreation Board meeting on the 18th. It's important to note that a postcard is not nearly large enough to detail the projects that we presented the night of the neighborhood meeting. There were 4 projects that were discussed. The house was one of them. And these 4 projects account for millions of dollars worth of improvements to the park. And while it may seem like this timeline is short, I can tell you that the input that we continue to get has hit the saturation point. The second house is a house that is at Great Bear. The aerial photo on the right shows its relationship to the chalet and sits behind the shop building. We estimate the construction around the 1960s. It has a wooden foundation and was last used for storage of Winter Wonderland lights and is currently not being used. Some additional pictures of that structure. It is, like I said, it's not being used, but it is secured. Sits in close proximity to our park shop. that is out there, which is a report to work location every month of the year. The Park Board did, at their November 18th meeting, approve of the resolution to declare these structures surplus and for demolition. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thanks, Kelby. All right, we'll move into public input for this item. So I'd invite anyone forward who has comments on this item. I know there's likely a lot of them. So my ask would maybe be if you have unique things to mention that previous speakers have not touched on, feel free to highlight those, and anyone can come forward at this time. Thank you. Good evening, ma'am. Come on up. Kelby's a tall guy, so pull those mics down.
And I'm
There you go.
short. Good evening, and thank you for listening to us. My name is Andrea Keene, and I am here on behalf of my family and some of the other neighbors in the Tuthill Park area. As longtime supporters of our family, of our city parks, through park board terms held by both my mother and my father, as well as land and monetary gifts to our city parks, we also have lived in our home adjacent to Tuthill Park since 1969, so that's over 50 years. To us, this decision to demolish this historic house seems very extreme and very rushed. It concerns many of us in the neighborhood that the desires of a few adjacent properties have prompted the city's involvement in this issue. Whether this is true or not, there is still not a sound reason for the removal of the house. While no one denies the last couple of years have been hard for the city and its parks, what with the tornado damage in 19 and the removal of so many trees due to the emerald ash disease and now the coronavirus, using the proposition that preserving the house is not financially relevant is a little far-fetched at this stage. That house is a part of Tuthill Park's history, and not only that, it offers a wonderful place for certain types of gatherings. Not everyone is looking to spend a lot of money or needs a huge venue to have an event. That house has provided a much-needed place for bridal parties, getting ready for weddings, for graduations, retirement parties, group gatherings of all kinds. The list goes on and on. Many people desire an inside-outside venue. And I know that the inside might be on the small side, but the wonderful deck, which is used tremendously, is what makes this space so important and so popular. With outside weddings growing more popular in Sioux Falls, it's not only the garden, but the ability to use this quaint house to get prepared in. And while all of this is so important, so is the fact that the Tuthill family's legacy should be honored and remembered. Once that building is gone, as the park department said with regard to the Phillips house, it cannot be replaced, and a plaque just really does not suffice. Our family has offered to help with this project as well as others in the neighborhood. What we are saying tonight is that there are options. There are options including helping with the repairs and the continued maintenance of the house. Presently, we can say that we have at least $60,000 raised between just a few people to invest in the continued maintenance on repairs of the home. We feel that the park and services they provide are for the city and not just for its neighbors. We have all experienced our own issues that come with having a property that is adjacent to a park. But we knew that would be the case when we bought our homes there. Additionally, there has been little talk about the improvements. Tonight was the first time I had heard anything about that. How much is it going to cost the taxpayers in addition to tearing down the building? Are we going to just do minimal landscaping, or is it going to be a multi-million-dollar project that goes in over there? These are things that we should take the time to learn about before we move ahead and remove the building without having a plan and action for going ahead. Our family feels strongly that this house serves a dual purpose for this community. It's an asset to the park department, and its mere presence helps tell the story of the wonderful gift that the Tuthill family gave to this city. That legacy is important for future generations to know, and it needs to be preserved. It needs to be preserved because we need people to continue to give land and donate funds to build our city parks up and to keep this community going the way it has. And by tearing things down instead of keeping them maintained, really, I think would be a detriment to the city going forward, that people would not perhaps feel so strongly about giving to the park department when they know it's not there forever. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Andrea. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Please come on forward. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Justine Peterson. I'm a resident in the Tuthill Highlands neighborhood. Thank you for your time tonight. I know you guys have heard this a couple of times. Not my personal letter. I sent it to Mr. Maris, but I figured I'd read it here today. I'll start out with a quote. It says, "It's a privilege to wake up in this house that existed before us and will exist after us. If only the walls of the Tuthill house could speak, what a wonderful story that would be. I've been a resident of the Tuthill Highlands neighborhood since my toddlerhood in 1989. I have some incredible memories in that park, and specifically around the house and the beautiful gardens behind it. My only hope is that my children have the same iconic house to play around, but somehow now that seems unlikely. After the Tuthill house has persevered for more than a century, the Parks Department has decided its purpose has been fully served. I strongly disagree with this and ask that the council vote against the decision to demolish it." I recently came across an article stating that upon gifting the land and buildings to the city, Mr. Tuthill had a few requirements, the list that you read earlier, right? One of which was that appropriate improvements be made. One has to wonder that after so many years, as part of the southern jewel of Sioux Falls' park system, when did the Tuthill house's situation become so dire, or rather how? How has the Parks Department allowed this well-known structure to deteriorate beyond repair? I realize, of course, that beyond repair is not the terminology being used as justification. However, it feels quite the same as saying it is not a good use of taxpayer money. History is a living, breathing entity. So how do you tell it you're just too old and costly? It's just not worth it. And cast it aside. I realize that the Tuthill house is not an income-generating resource. I realize that it needs a fair amount of work. And I realize this work comes at a price. But what percentage of our park system features generate revenue? Do we say the same thing of the playgrounds, the fields, gardens, urban forests that make our parks great? No. We continually reinvest in these because quality of life improvements are by nature a continual investment. The returns are not monetary, but something greater. Are a sense of local pride, fond memories, and a time since past, and a beautiful front yard to show off to all who visit not worth our continued investment? The Parks Department budget would seem so suggest otherwise. Certainly there's room for saving the Tuthill house there. In conclusion, I grew up in this neighborhood and have chosen to continue living and raising my children here. I've made incredible memories in Tuthill Park, including around the very house that is now being considered for demolition. I only hope that you will preserve this piece of history so that the children of this neighborhood, fellow residents of Sioux Falls, and other visitors can make their own memories there with the Tuthill house on display as a reminder of this great park's origin. After all, it is what Mr. Tuthill would have wanted. And then just kind of a couple notes that I had been taking. Thanks for clearing up the issue on the metal roof that was installed on it after the storm. The abatement has to happen either way. So we're looking at a chunk of dollars that needs to be spent on the property regardless. And my argument to it has limited usefulness is, if we want to preserve its legacy, then let's go all in and make it more useful. If we're going to invest in it, let's not just do the bare minimum. Let's make it something more and make it more purposeful, but while maintaining, its origins. Thank you.
Thanks, Justine. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Come on up, ma'am.
Good evening. I
Good
am
evening.
Sarah DeWitt. And my husband, Jim, and I own the Tuthill Lumber Building downtown. I'm not certain if any of you remember what it looked like when we purchased it. It was an orange pumpkin and not worthy of a remodel. But we went forth, and you've all hopefully been through it and seen what it's about. He built things very well. We have a floor joist 5.5 inches on center. Quite an amazing man. It is his son and daughter-in-law who actually donated that home. Ironically, I grew up right beside Dot Tuthill. She was Mrs. Tuthill in the mansion beside us wild bear kids. She gave Hershey's chocolate bars away at Halloween. Quite an amazing woman. The Tuthills, just like the Shermans and the Phillips, are part of the Sioux Falls community history. This home is before even that. It's a historical farmhouse. And it's not about money, it's about memories. It's about the memories of the farmer, it's about the Tuthills, and it's about all of the people who had those small events at this home. One of my husband's friends, whose father worked at Morel's growing up from the north side, jokingly called it the clubhouse of the north side. For those people who didn't belong to private clubs, this was a valuable place to gather and make memories. And to hear now that it's come down to money, well, Jim and I are putting our money, what we believe in, and we are one of the donors because we want to help make a difference. We want more people to have memories here, especially after COVID. Don't we want to have more places where we can gather? Even today, when Jim stopped by, there were some older women socially distanced having a new memory there. I think you should really reconsider. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Anyone else here to speak on this? Come on up, ma'am. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Liz Larson, and I'm a resident I grew up in the Tuthill neighborhood. My childhood home is just a block away from the Tuthill Park. I used to play there all the time in the playground since the early 1980s. My mother still lives there in the same house, and she would have loved to have come to this meeting today, but as a person in her late 70s, she didn't feel like she should risk it with the COVID issues. So for me and my family, this house is a home which our community views as very important to our history, just as we've heard from all of these people. I've even learned some new facts about the house. Besides being the namesake for our area, the Tuthill family generously donated this land and the home for us to preserve and use as a park. My own sister was married there. I was a bridesmaid there. I had other friends who were married there. I have black and white photographs of us all getting ready in that house. So the house is very important for a lot of us. And once it's gone, and that's what really gets me about this issue. We can't get it back once we tear it down. And our future generations, I'm a mom, I have kids who I bring to that park regularly. They won't have the choice to demolish the house or not because it'll already be gone. Another thing that hasn't been quite brought up yet is that the decision-making and the community input around this issue is being done during a pandemic time when there weren't any call-in options to the park meeting that we had. So a lot of more people wanted to come than really felt comfortable coming, and I feel like we should at least extend the deadline for making this decision where people can come out and not feel like they're risking, their health. And there was also not a Zoom or call-in option, and I asked. The last meeting in the park department meeting, I actually wanted to go, but I myself had COVID, and so I couldn't go. And importantly, a lot of people are finding it odd about how this decision is made. It doesn't exude transparency. I know there was a long periods of time where there was repairs that needed to be made that weren't done, but yet they were budgeted for. It's just confusing. While, some people might want to prefer to use that park money to restore something else, various members of the community have offered to bankroll most of the project. I've heard, different varying amounts, but a very significant chunk of this project could be donated by the community. Therefore, it kind of shouldn't be an issue, I would think. I hope that is the case. If not, there's some other dynamic that I'm not privy to that's in play, and I maybe don't understand the whole situation. But I would hope that our community was headed in a direction that could be transparent. It also seems to me to be a great opportunity for a public-private partnership. We've got some great other, Levitt at the park. We've got some wonderful park private funds that have gone into building great things for our community. This could be another opportunity for that. So I hope we can move forward in a community-based spirit and work on a decision that works for everybody, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Come on up, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the council, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jesse Smith, and I live on Edgewood Road. This is the third time we've had this debate in a public forum. Each step of the way, the Sioux Falls Parks Board has made the difficult decision, the correct decision, to declare this house a surplus. I urge you to follow the recommendations of your park board and give deference to the decision that they've arrived at after this deliberation. Unfortunately, this debate has included some unsavory tactics and has devolved into personal attacks. Despite what has been broadcast by the opposition as a few neighbors driving this process, asking for this, we didn't ask for this process. We didn't ask for the house to be removed, and we didn't initiate the process. As was stated by Mr. Maris, the issue predates our tenancy in the neighborhood, yet they continue to insist there's only a few of us calling for the removal. It's patently false and simply not true. Since the first meeting, we've been systematically excluded from conversations by the opposition group. No conversations about a resolution, no neighborly conversations about how we can find alternate solutions, nothing. This latest tactic seems to be a delay to raise money and offer alternative solutions. I would argue they've had that time. They've already had a one-year moratorium. The September 2019 tornado caused irreparable damages to the home. The home sat with a blue tarp stapled to the roof for more than a year. Broken and missing windows for more than a year. Nobody came forward to fundraise then. Nobody came forward and declared it a historical treasure worth saving. Nobody even bothered to care for the lawn. It was allowed to deteriorate to a condition that no private homeowner would be allowed to maintain in this city. Yet here we are today, attempting to kick the can on this problem. Even if dollars were raised, what about the ongoing expense? What about the maintenance expenses? Can the city even accept a gift with conditions that they're proposing? This isn't a viable solution. It's a convenient off-ramp from making a tough decision. It's nothing more than that. The situation is untenable, and it's going to cost real dollars to fix. $250,000 to restore a tiny 800 square foot space. That's about $315 per square foot. Is that a wise investment? Is that a good use of dollars, even private dollars? I would argue not. I'd like to end with a compliment to the Parks Board. Decisions made by the Park Board that predate you and I have given Sioux Falls one of the best park systems in the country. There have been many difficult decisions along the way to get to this point, but they were the right decisions. Like I said in my opening remarks, the Park Board has never wavered, has not opted for the path of least resistance. They've made the tough decision. Your Park Board has a long history of making good decisions and has gone through the proper process of collecting information, deliberating, and making the right decision to you today. It has not been easy. This vote will not be easy. But I ask that you support your board's recommendations. They are the content experts. They've done their homework, and I hope that you'll support them. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Come on up, ma'am.
Again, my name's Catherine Riffle. I've heard what the gentleman had to say, but all I can say is the park has had that place for all these years. Why did they leave it get so bad? If you can go down and fix the statue of David, why don't you go and fix that up there? If you can waste $185 million in 10 years through the Housing and Homeless Coalition, you can lose hundreds of billions of dollars with the guard. When he was in office, nobody questioned any of it. So why is putting out $250,000 to fix a place that can be an educational spot? Instead of lying about everything, the money and intents and everything, remember, to lie makes a statement, that no one knows to be false, especially within the intent to deceive. If he implied deceiving so thoroughly as to obscure the truth. So I would say that the park had contents of taking care of this place before, then let the park get back out there and fix it up. Bye.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm representing both myself and my husband. My husband is Tad Anderson. I'm Leah Anderson. I've written to each one of you about both the mask thing and also the house. I don't have anything prepared because I wasn't sure if I was going to speak, but we moved to Tuthill neighborhood knowing that that house was there and knowing that we wanted it to be there. And the gentleman that spoke that was for tearing it down, I'm pretty sure he just moved to the neighborhood recently, and when he moved there, he knew that that house was there. So we have used the home for events. We love the Tuthill neighborhood because of the historic part of it. We wouldn't have moved to that neighborhood if we did not like it, and we liked it the way it was when we moved there. So I just want to be on record that we live a block off the park along with many of these other people, and we want the home to be restored. And we haven't donated to the fund as of yet because I was out of town, but we are also willing to put up a monetary donation for this. So I just want you to know that.
All right, thank you, Leah.
Tim Stenga, I'd like to see this deferred until after the first of the year. The reason why is there's a lot of people back here that want to waste their money and they want to throw it in the sky and fix a building because these people have a lot of memories. I can remember when I was a young kid going to weddings. A lot of people like to go in with mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and cook meals out of that house. Did they spend time in the house? No. A lot of people went there ahead of time. They cooked meals out of the house, and then people were able to walk through and go sit at the park bench. That's what I remember about Tuthill. Right now, and I've asked this same question, where is our maintenance program on any of our city buildings? Why has it went down so badly when if you own a house and you see your roof is bad, do you just leave the roof go and not do anything about it, or do you fix it? Normally you fix it. If you see windows go bad, you go and see if you can get windows and put them in. The way it looks at this house has been so, how do you want to say it? The maintenance on it is horrific. But yet we have a baseball field that we're going to put money into, that really and truthfully, there's a lot of citizens in Sioux Falls that said that we're wasting our money on the ball field. But yet, we're still putting money into that ball field. Why is that? Is it because of certain people that go to the ball games? I'm almost thinking it is. All these people are asking, give them some time. They just started collecting money and they got over $60,000. They come up with $250,000 or $300,000, which I do believe that they will come up with. Let's defer it. Let's give these guys a chance. Let's talk to different businesses and see if they will donate products for free to fix that problem, but to fix that house up, because I know darn well that I can go out right now today, matter of fact tomorrow, and I know darn well that I can get people to donate as much as you need to get donated. And it'll be at the door and it'll be ready to put in. And you can even get help that will work for nothing to do this. Give these guys a chance back here. That's all they're asking. When you got somebody that comes up and says demolish something, there's a reason why he wants it demolished. The Parks Board really hasn't been on my best. I really don't look at the Parks Board as being a voice for me. because nobody represents me in my neighborhood. I have never talked to the Parks Board. I never had anything to do with the Parks Board. We have a swimming pool, if I'm correct, it's Frank Olson swimming pool that wants to make it into a spray park. That was the last I've heard. The citizens of Sioux Falls do not want a spray park. But the Parks Board, whatever they say, is going to go in that neighborhood. I'm just asking again, let's defer this. Let's leave it up to these people to come up with the money. I know darn well, I've known these people for a long time. I went to church with them. They know a lot of people in town, and they know darn well that they can come up with all the products for nothing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Come on up, ma'am. Good evening.
My name is Margaret Blomberg. My husband Greg and I are 30-year residents of Tuthill Highlands. I've been co-conspirator in the campaign to save Tuthill Park House from being declared surplus and demolished. When we started this roughly 40 days ago, we saw an injustice in the making and sought to find a solution. As we talked to friends, neighbors, and even strangers, it became clear that we needed to give it our best effort. Some said they had received the postcard but not attended the meeting and had not heard of the park department plans to destroy the house. Without fail, they said, "What? Why?" And we were left to try and explain the park's position to them. They asked, what will they put there instead? We had to say, no plans, just more green space. They said, isn't there enough green space already? There is money for demolition, etc. Wouldn't it be nice to direct that for repairs instead? In essence, no one felt it is currently an eyesore or just a victim of neglect. No one can understand why some would say it harbors criminal element when there is no proof via police reports or park personnel. Most said they had personally hosted or attended events there and know it generates revenue. They think it's a very good use of taxpayer dollars, especially when Parks hasn't indicated where that money might be used instead. By the way, Parks said that money, not that there isn't money. So many we spoke with thanked us profusely, and that made us even more committed. In short, we're here representing citizens from the neighborhood and the entire city who trust us to be their voice and to speak to halt the injustice. They believe the nearly 150-year-old house is a valuable piece of history and should not be destroyed. On behalf of these citizens, we implore the City Council to vote against the surplus resolution. We know also that if this is delayed, there are ways to raise funds to help restore the house. That's what civic-minded individuals do. I offer examples from my own family. More than 30 years ago, my husband envisioned an event called Media One Fun Ski to raise funds for Children's Inn. It continues yearly to this day at Great Bear, a city park. 10 years ago, our two sons helped create a nonprofit called FAST to build single-track trails in city parks. The trails you see in Tuthill Park today are the result of an ambitious effort to raise $75,000 to hire a professional to build them. You see, it can be done, given the opportunity and some time. In closing, I offer a metaphor and quote, by permission, the good earth, a farm near Lenox. Quote, our soon-to-be neighbor who has never seen a sunrise or sunset out here, let alone spend a night, has decided to kill every single tree on his property. These old cottonwoods have seen countless sunrises and sunsets, survived droughts, survived blizzards, provided shelter for countless birds, squirrels, and other critters. This morning is their last sunrise, and they'll never see another sunset. And to make it worse, the coward doesn't have the courage to kill them himself. He's hired a hitman with an excavator to do it for him. Awful, unquote. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Council and Mayor, thank you for listening this evening, and thank you for your service. My name is Ellie Smith. I'm here to support the Park Board's recommendation and ask that you adopt the resolution as presented. Co-conspirator is an interesting term. I'm going to try to stay calm from some of the comments that were made, but for the record, the House doesn't block my view. I think you all know how easy it is to rev up support and get 200 people to sign a petition. The silence of those that aren't here should be a signal to you. The people don't care about this House. Their silence signals support. I am representing several of the neighbors who actually border the house and live in closest proximity to the house that support its removal. I went inside the house recently, and some of the comments that have been made here tonight tell me that many of these people aren't familiar with the current state of it. There's a microwave, there's no stove, there's no oven. The entire upstairs is completely inaccessible. And while some have suggested that you look through the windows or you go in and go, it doesn't look too bad, you have to give that a little perspective. For one floor that is split into 2 small rooms and the interior will not see any change or improvement for $250,000, you have to consider whether it's worth spending that kind of money. It has such limited utility that the Parks Department has never been able to justify the expense. It isn't typical to task the Parks Department with maintaining a house. We need to be fair to the Parks Department in that regard. The city of Sioux Falls has an amazing park system, and I think they are entitled to some credit for that. The $300 per square foot will not address improvements, landscaping, gating, lighting, security, and as I said, it'll leave half of the structure completely unusable. After years of deterioration, they never came forward. Some have suggested that the scenario changes if they raise money for the repairs, but it doesn't. The house is a large burden to place on the city to require years of expenses in maintenance, security, and liability for something that costs more to maintain than it makes in rentals. They'll try to convince you that the house is needed for rentals in colder months. I obtained the rental information for recent years. Given COVID and the tornado, I decided it was only fair to go back to January through April of 2019. In those 4 months, the house was only rented 10 times, and 6 of them were April weddings. So in January through March, it was rented 4 times. This is a convenient space. They don't love the house. They love the space and the proximity to their homes. I agree, it should continue to be available to serve those purposes. It isn't being rented by people who can't afford something else. There are plenty of other options. The Overlook Cafe, the Arboretum, community centers, golf club courses, I think Kelby did a very good job of outlining that. They'll try to convince you that this is a small portion of the park department's budget, but they say that without realization of how much the park's budget has to cover. $250,000 is a lot of money, and an 800 square foot house with an occupancy of less than 50 people whose rentals have dwindled over the years to a mere 13 rentals in the 6 months prior to COVID is not a wise investment. They claim it is historic. I am all for preservation, but there comes a point where it doesn't make sense financially, and at $300 per square foot, we have reached that point. They are asking for it to be preserved at all costs, without even knowing what it would cost to make the second floor functional, or to address the landscaping, or security, or other improvements, or ongoing expenses and maintenance. We don't just decide that because some historic information about one of several owners of a building would mean that it should be preserved at all costs. The house is an old wood frame prairie house that's likely suffered water intrusion from sitting for a year after the tornado. It's not an ornate mansion. Don't let them fool you. The Parks Department and the city of Sioux Falls are proven stewards of historic preservation. I think that there's been a lot of attention on the deed restrictions, and we should be asking how Mr. Tuthill requested that the land be used. He talked about it being used for a bandstand. I'm doubtful that he would feel his legacy is being preserved by sticking an irresponsible amount of public funds into something that is fondly referred to in the neighborhood as an eyesore.
Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate your input tonight.
Thank you.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman. I'll make it really brief.
Can you state your name, please?
Dr. Aaron Skunoff, and I'm part of the Terrace Park Neighborhood Association. And last weekend we had a plaque that we had put up in the park for the old Phillips house. And I was at the November meeting of the Parks Department, and it was interesting that they had a vote to put a plaque up and about a house that was torn down 53 years ago that at the time they didn't think was necessary. We're losing more and more of these houses. We're losing more and more of these gathering areas. It sounds like, I don't live in the Tuthill area, but it sounds like they got one heck of a neighborhood over there, and I would highly encourage you guys to send this back to the Parks Department to see if they can work with that neighborhood. The reason why this house is not there anymore is because people just didn't take care of it through the 50s and 60s. In 1966, they tore it down on a cold Saturday morning without any public input. They talked to the Minnehaha County Historical Society. The Historical Society came up with a plan, went to the park's president. They thought they had a time to sit down with the rest of the parks board. Didn't happen. They came in and just tore it down. So I would, again, highly recommend you guys throw this back to the Parks Department and see if they could work with the neighborhood. So another plaque doesn't have to go up in 53 years. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Come on up, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I appreciate this time. My name is Kathy English. Can you hear me with the mask?
Yes, you bet. You can take it down now to speak.
My name is Kathy English. My husband, Gil, and I have made our home in the Tuthill Park neighborhood for 43 years. In fact, when we sit in our living room, we look out at the Tuthill house. First, we want to go on record as thanking the Park Department, especially the Tuthill Park service workers, for the amazing job they do in keeping the park and the garden so beautiful. It can't be easy given the budget we're working with today. I, along with many Tuthill Park and neighbors and others in adjoining neighborhoods, represent a group of people who are genuinely concerned about the Sioux Falls Park Department plan to demolish the iconic Tuthill Park house. That is, those people were not comfortable coming. They support restoring this house, and you have their names, those 209 signatures that I attached to your plan for your meeting. If the planned demolition of this house is simply a financial decision, there are options from the private sector for financing the restoration and future upkeep of this historic Tuthill Park house. In the July 5th, 2018 issue of the Argus Leader, the Mr. Mayor, Paul Tenhagen, is quoted as asking individuals with a passion for parks to step up. He plans to connect passionate donors with important causes to put dreams and ideas in motion. Should the Tuthill Park house be excluded from the mayor's plan, there are lots of us with dreams. Currently, the cost for long overdue maintenance has been estimated at between $118,000 to $200,000. Given the small size of the house and the fact that the house is structurally sound, we started questioning these numbers. In fact, $250,000 was another worst-case scenario figure. That's overbids are often used when the presenting party wants the structure demolished. The $37,500 architect fee was a red flag for us. So our group hired a neighbor, a highly respected Sioux Falls contractor who has been in the business for 40 years. He knows the neighborhood well. We asked him to look at the Tuthill house, evaluate it structurally, and give us a bid for the needed updates. His bid, which I can certainly give you a copy of, for the windows and doors was $38,122, siding $24,432, roofing, materials and labor, $16,031. This makes me sad because the metal roof they put on just a few weeks ago was $10,000. The heating and cooling for both floors, $6,500, and miscellaneous like lead paint removal, gutters, dump fees, fasteners, miscellaneous repairs, and that's a number that's not solid, it might be less, is $10,000. So the total bid was $95,550 for doing the needed maintenance and restoration. The James Hardy smooth concrete siding will be used. Smooth plywood soffits with some crown detail will be used. Is it okay? Thanks to two generous benefactors, we have donations currently of $60,000 for this project, and we have not actively sought donors, and that's because in the last 40 days, we've just been working on trying to preserve the house. Another approximately $20,000 in professional expertise and materials has been donated for the inside update and restoration. A fund is being set up at the Sioux Falls Foundation, and that's for reasons of transparency and tax purposes. This facility does generate income. Once needed maintenance is completed, the bookings for events will increase and thus will the revenue. Although a park benefactor has come forward and offered to help through their trust for the ongoing maintenance. As for the new landscaping, etc., we are suggesting that the opportunity to enhance the yard be offered to neighbors, garden clubs, etc., volunteers working under the direction of the Tuthill Park service workers. In 1953, the Tuthill farm was donated to the city along with their summer house, and it stood proud and alone, looking out over well-kept flower gardens and farmlands. Everyone, I included, who has built or bought a house in the Tuthill neighborhood since 1953 did so knowing that the 143-year-old Tuthill house anchored the park.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate your input tonight.
Can I ask for a moratorium? That's it. A one-year moratorium, so we can pull this together.
I think we all read between the lines on that one, so you bet. You bet.
And here's a picture of it before the tornado.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Please come forward. Come on up.
Mike Zitter at Sioux Falls. Have we stopped and talked? We have actually talked to the Minnehaha County Society, Historical Society, about what options that they might be able to help us with to save this house. The reason I ask, what's the price? What's the price you put on history? You know, when I look at that house, I see a little house on the prairie. The reason I say that, this house was built at the same time another little house up in DeSmit was, and they've done a very good job of taking care of that house. Why can't we come up with a plan? You know, so I see this house as going all the way back to the Civil War days, built under an 1862 Homestead Act under Abraham Lincoln. It was one of our early pioneers that helped build the Sioux Falls. So I think if we got people behind us willing to come up and raise money, we should be willing to sit down and give them a chance to hear what they want to say, you know. And we have a $600 million city budget. There's somewhere along the way we can come up with 120,000, 20,000 here, 50,000 there to help raise the money. So I think this is a good chance for the mayor to help preserve some part of our history and put forth a plan. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Come on up, sir.
Bruce Danielson. I didn't plan to be here tonight, and I've got a lot of work to do, and it just wasn't going to fit in, but As I was driving home a little bit ago, I heard a gentleman up here talking about why this building should be torn down. And I started paying attention to some of the ages of the people who are encouraging it to be torn down. None of these people apparently have any perspective on history and what's important to this community. The Phillips house was just mentioned, and I take a little different approach on this. As someone that the city of Sioux Falls had arrested and jailed for growing raspberries and garlic in his yard, then was lied to in a process to notice abate by the city attorney's office, finds this to be another example of our Parks Department taking advantage of our strong mayor form of government to destroy our history. I'm a strong believer in history. Sioux Falls has quite an amazing history. But as we go through a lot of the decisions this Parks Department has made, it's gotten down to the point of let's just destroy all the history. There never was any history before there was this mayor in office, just like the last administration, there wasn't any mayors before him. And so we have to do just exactly what they want to do, and we waste all our money doing play palaces instead of preserving our history. Just because this isn't a new concrete structure or a piece of concrete sidewalk like they wanted to do to Terrace Park, doesn't mean that this building shouldn't stand or be destroyed. This was an amazing gift for all of our histories. This is a great house. It's a tiny house. My grandparent, Godfred, was born in a structure that was about this size. They moved into a slightly larger structure that cost $500 in 1885 and 1888 to build and put onto the farmstead that my family still has. It's an amazing gift of history. What this shows, this great house, great story, great family who thought ahead to what was important to Sioux Falls. They gave us a piece of their history so that the rest of us could enjoy it and understand it. And it's now gotten to the point that we have an ungrateful parks management and city leaders who would rather see it destroyed than to preserve our history. It appears the neglect of the leaders of our city should have the same treatment I received. A broken tooth by a city administration, jail time, court time, and the verdict I finally was able to receive was the verdict of a fair judge that said things need to be put back to right. We have to quit destroying things. We have to quit tearing people down. This city needs to start working together, and we've got a group of people here that I think, are amazing that they want to put their money on the table and do something to save this building. This is not an expensive project to rebuild. It should not cost $250,000. It's like the lies that were told when it came to the Indian burial wall, and then we ended up spending way more than the $12,000 it probably would have cost to do the minor repairs on the burial wall. We spent $250,000 on a bunch of concrete that wasn't necessary. You're trying to do it again. This is a great house, a great story, a great family. It needs to be preserved.
Come on forward.
My name is Kathy Becker. My dad was the caretaker up there for 28 years. He's the one that gutted the house and made it into a reception hall, and he fought really hard to have that done. I just want you guys to, take a look at why it's gotten so run down as far as it has, who's in charge of that, who makes the decisions of where the money goes. When he gutted it, it paid for itself within the first 2 years by being rented. Why aren't we doing, like, there's that sledding hill that I know families love to go to. They could have been renting it out as a warming house for them. I mean, there's so many things that they could have done with it. Who made the decision not to? Who made the decision not to promote it? Who made the decision not to fix it up every year? that's what you should be taking a look at. I think you guys are all smart enough to realize what's really going on. I mean, all of us took our time to be here to support it. How many took their time to be here to not support it? So I just hope you guys really, I mean, it's real personal for me because my dad's long gone, and I know he fought really hard, but thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? If there's anyone else, come on up. We've had over an hour testimony here. I think we've heard a lot of the similar arguments coming on both sides of this issue. So what I'd ask is, we've got some new positions. I'd sure love to hear them, and we'll keep moving forward with public input. So good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is John Heber. I work at Cutler Law Firm. My family, I grew up in the Tuthill neighborhood. My wife, Kayla Heber, and her family grew up in the Tuthill neighborhood. I'm up here maybe to offer some different perspective. I want to talk about the law a bit. I haven't heard much about that tonight. The law is SDCL 613-1. It deals with surplus property. The park seeks to declare or determine that the Tuthill house is surplus property. That statute is most often used to sell unwanted property, not to destroy it. And as such, it makes strict compliance with the requirements of the statute critical. The statute requires determination that the structure is no longer necessary, useful, or suitable for the purpose for which it was required. All three must be proven for the resolution to pass. And we don't need to speculate as to what the purpose was. We have the deed for which it was originally acquired. And the original purpose, in part, was park and recreational purposes. The Tuthills donated the land and real estate for park and recreational purposes. What has changed? What has changed to make it no longer necessary, no longer useful, no longer suitable? To say that the house is no longer necessary, useful, or suitable cannot be supported by any of the park board's findings that were presented tonight or at any time in this matter. Those findings deal with cost, not use, not suitability, not necessity. No argument has been presented on those factors, which are the only factors to be determined tonight. That's the context of this resolution. It's surplus. It's not a cost issue. And not only that, the cost was created by the neglect of the property in the first place. Now, while there are a few South Dakota cases directly on point with the matter before the council tonight, there is a recent South Dakota Supreme Court case just from a few weeks ago, State v. Buffalo Chip. Great case, just came down from the South Dakota Supreme Court. That case actually deals with a statute that's similar to this. And talks about basic sentence structure, basic grammar. It's a long opinion, and I would point out in particular Justice Kern's special concurrence beginning on paragraph 48. Those paragraphs are marked. There it talks about statutes when they use the word or and the difference between conjunctive statutes and disjunctive statutes. Here, this statute, it's prohibitive disjunctive language. And by that, it requires the finding that it's no longer necessary, no longer useful, no longer suitable. Not a finding of just one of those, but all three must be met for this resolution to be passed. If the city were to declare the property surplus here, it would run afoul of the statute and the rules articulated by that South Dakota Supreme Court case in State v. Buffalo Chip. As such, I ask that the resolution be denied as to the Tuthill House. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Come on up, sir. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, My name is Alex Hallback, and I'm also with Cutler Law Firm. I'm also, I live in a historic district here in Sioux Falls and also serve as the chair of the Board of Historic Preservation in Sioux Falls. And as some of the council members and mayor are aware, the Board of Historic Preservation passed endorsed and sent each of you a letter outlining the historic significance of that property. And we are guided by the Secretary of the Interior standards, which really guide the preservation requirements. The first of those requirements is the pattern of events or historic trends. There have been multiple layers of Sioux Falls history that have been interwoven with this property, both because of the donors and the style construction of the home. It is also one of the only remaining examples of a farmhouse and a summer home of a past Sioux Falls family. The second factor is the association with the life and events of important persons. Obviously, the Tuthill family has been very important in Sioux Falls history, but there's also William Howey that was also a resident of that property, and he was one of the first settlers in Sioux Falls. So a couple historic individuals that lived there. The third is design and construction value. This property was built between 1870 and 1907. It has a very unique prairie design, and there's really no homes of this design type or style in any one of the 7 historic districts here in Sioux Falls. So there is historic significance to it. And I know one of the previous speakers this evening talked about how this is not a mansion and therefore in some way, shape, or form designates that it doesn't deserve to be preserved. And I would say just the opposite. Sioux Falls had very humble beginnings. And this property and this farmhouse does show very much what a lot of Sioux Falls settlers and what it's indicative of where Sioux Falls came from. So, I don't believe that just because it's large or significant or ornate somehow makes it more worthy of preservation than other property in Sioux Falls. Lastly, and I know we've touched on this a little bit, but it has been the position of this administration to look for these public-private partnerships. And we've heard from 3 or 4 families tonight that have been willing to open their checkbooks and their hearts to preserve what is very important to them and to the neighbors, and that comes in the form of dollar signs. Over $60,000 has been raised thus far. There is a significant expense. One of the things that was not outlined this evening, at least not yet with the parks, is I believe it's approximately $35,000 that has been earmarked through the parks budget to demolish this property. So if you take the $60,000 of donations and you add that $35,000 of demolition costs that would otherwise be sunk into this, you're essentially at the $95,000 that's been outlined by some of the proponents for saving the property to keep it. So, again, I would just like to remind this administration and this group that the position of the council and the mayor has been to create these wonderful public-private partnerships. And I think that a lot of the proponents that have been in the audience here tonight and have spoken on behalf of that are stepping forward to do exactly what this group has asked of them. And so I would ask that both the historic significance of the property be considered, as well as the fact that there are donors that have stepped forward to pay a significant portion of this cost, and that the group, that this council go ahead and remove the Tuthill property from the resolution declaring surplus and move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alex. All right, is there anyone else here to speak tonight? Looks like we've heard most of the public input here, and it looks like we have. So let's move into first, if there's any questions for the park staff, and then we can work on the motion. So start there. Any questions for the parks team on this? Councilor Erickson, go ahead.
Thank you. Parks, I'll ask a handful of questions, I guess, and some might even be for the attorney, whether Stacy or others. This has been a really difficult issue. We hear you. We hear both sides. Unfortunately, it didn't have to be so divisive. It's awful that it's come to that. These are your neighbors and your friends, and so I'm hoping that there can be some repair to those relationships as we move forward. With that said, my question, again, parks or attorneys, can we accept private contractors to come in and do this work? I know we have to go through a process of the bid process. Kelby, you did say that. There's some pretty smart people in the neighborhood, so assuming we're talking about the Tuthill house, because that's what we've been talking about so much, there's some really smart people in the neighborhood. Can we say, ABC contractor, you can come in and do that, because they're willing to donate their time and energy and their crew to do just that? Is that something that can be accepted?
It is something that could be accepted. It would be done through a gifting agreement that would be done between the city and whoever is donating that service. And the size of that gift would need to be approved by the park board and the city council before we could accept it.
Okay, thank you for that. Can we accept dollars with conditions to do this as well? So say the conditions are, we want to restore the first and second level and we want it to go back to the way it was. Can those conditions be placed on with funds? I just want to make sure everybody knows the expectation. So all of a sudden the neighborhood doesn't raise 200 grand and say, sorry, we can't do it that way. We have to restore it back to the original design, because there's been a lot of changes made to this. Let's be honest, the roof needs to go. It was to seal it. But what is the intent if that were to happen?
That would be a conversation that we would need to have, but we can do a conditional gifting agreement that lays out all of the conditions within the gift, not only what the city would accept, but what the donors would be willing to provide.
Okay, and I'm going to do two more. The last one for you. I'd like to know a little bit more about park safety. I know that there is some partying going on. I know that there's some other stuff up there as well. What can the Parks Department do, again, if this should be delayed, to ensure park safety for everyone? So it doesn't turn into a squatter house or a party or a whatever you want to call it. We want to make sure that this is saved. Is it cameras? Is it fencing? Is it buffers? What would that look like, or would that be the ongoing conversation?
There are lots of things that we can do. We work very closely with the police department to ensure safety and security across the park system. And there's various things that we've worked with them in the past. Sometimes it's opening up some sight lines so that the officers can see from some various perspectives, whether they're inside the park or out. So there are lots of things that we can do and have done in the past with the police department to ensure safety and to make sure that the parks are being used appropriately.
Okay, and then my last question for now, until something else is sparked. Alex, if you could come up. My question is, it's my understanding that this was not listed. I understand your position and the historical board's position. And, you know, I've heard, not the neighbors say, but I've heard others in the community saying, just because it's old doesn't mean it's historical. Why hasn't this been put on the historical registry? I don't know enough about it, so educate me on why it was never deemed as a historical.
Sure. It's really up to the property owner to make that designation and make that request. So, really it would have been Parks' request to make. We as the board can't step forward and say we want to submit an application. That would need to be something that was done. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that's part of the limitation. And, obviously with the making the request and having it designated, there come with it stipulations on repairs and conditions too. So, there's always that trade-off between the two. So I think, it might be a question for Parks as to why that's never been explored, but from our position and from the board's position, it is a historic property. So.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm just not as familiar with how that process works. So thank you for communicating that. I'll stand by for now.
All right, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Counselor. Any other questions for city staff on this one from the council? All right, seeing none, let's get a motion on the floor then.
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Jensen.
Second, Sale.
All right, I'm going to give that to Counselor Jensen on the second there. Let's move into discussion then amongst the council here.
Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Sale, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to amend by striking the following words, house, along with the, in the third whereas statement and in section 1.
All right? And you want to explain what that's...
Second, Star.
All right, you want to explain essentially what that motion is doing, Councilor Sale?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. That motion essentially withdraws the Tuthill house from the resolution declaring surplus.
Okay. So that motion is made by Councilor Sale and seconded by Councilor Starr to essentially remove the Tuthill house from this resolution. Discussion on this, Council. Councilor Neisser, go ahead.
In our notes, we have an extra part that says, and by relabeling section 3 to read section 2. Was that necessary in this proposed amendment as well? Just for...
No.
Okay. 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 Discussion on this item, or this amendment, I should say.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Mr. Mayor, if I could explain the amendment just a little bit. The amendment essentially removes the Tuthill house from being declared surplus. After the outpouring from the community, it is apparent to me, and I believe several others, that there would be enough impetus from the neighbors and other people interested in the parks to develop a plan to save this house. If that is workable, I would like to give that neighborhood group time to develop that. There's no immediate hazard in this house that it needs to be torn down right away. If they cannot come up with the dollars to do it and a plan to do it, we can always, at that time, declare the house surplus. But I would like to give them the opportunity to do it, and I know that there's at least one council member that is willing to spearhead that. So that's why I respectfully disagree with the Parks Department assertion of this house and hope we could move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Neitzer?
Well, first, before I make a comment, could somebody, Jim, could you just pull it so I can see the next sections listed after section 1? Okay, so it looks like it was a clerical update they're looking to make. So I would maybe make that motion after this, just
okay. So essentially, there's no section 2 in this, so we just got to clean up and relabel section 3, section 2. Sure. So we'll vote on, we'll take the discussion on this amendment, and then we'll do a cleanup amendment.
Sure, that'll work. So I've spent a lot of time looking at this, and I made a number of notes. So in no particular order, I'll just go through some things I've been thinking about. And I've talked to both sides on this. And first, I'd like to echo what Councilor Erickson said. I'm saddened to hear the division. I hope that there can be healing in this. We know that this didn't come forward because of any particular neighbors. This is something that's been kind of working its way through, and I just hope that you can all come to some healing on this. I hate to see fighting about this and the division. That being said, I did go out to see this house, and to me, when I looked at it, it's nowhere close to needing demolition. It looks like, to me, it's something that suffered from some perhaps benign neglect and deferred maintenance. And I'm not going to sit and blame, and I don't know how we got here, and I have had a talk with a few people in the administration. I think this is bigger than this house. And I had asked the question, we did this study 3 or 4 years ago where we did a report on what I thought was, but it wasn't, on our city buildings. And for the exact reason of something like this, which is we were getting behind on some repair and maintenance because we have so many buildings and structures around the city, and we needed really to come up with a plan where we would be making sure we're doing the HVAC and we're doing the roof and we're doing all that stuff. And it turns out that a lot of things like park buildings, including this, was not in that. And I understand we're moving forward to do a study to work on a more holistic, making sure that we're looking at these, because it seems like maybe it just wasn't a priority. I don't know what the issue is, but I would also say, respectfully, it's not the neighbors or the private donors' responsibility to lift this up. It was really our responsibility, and I guess somewhere we failed, and that's too bad.
to me, this building does have a history. I mean, we've had it was spoken about what the history is, so I'm not going to go through that. But with the history, when we own a building like that, I think comes the responsibility. We're entrusted to preserve history, and this is one of those items. And it's been talked about how much it would cost, and I think respectfully, and I think Parks has acknowledged this, the numbers that they had were really estimates, kind of sight unseen. So they were really kind of wet finger estimates, and we've got, I think, maybe a better estimate now. Either way, I don't think it's going to be near what we're afraid it's going to be if we were to restore it. And something I've learned from the historic people that know better than me, you don't necessarily have to restore it all to what it was originally. We could go a lot of different routes. One of the initiatives of the administration, which has been said, is that we want to, where can we raise private dollars for parks? Well, we have people stepping forward. Here we go. So why don't we do that? I will tell you, for me, I would be willing to find the money in the budget to do it with or without it, but I'm not going to say no to a gift. It seems like it's kind of, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. You kind of let a building go, and then you say, well, it's too far gone, so we got to tear it down. Well, and there's the arguments about we should repair, we'd have to repair a roof if we did it. We have to repair siding. Well, I have to do that in my house, but I don't tear it down when it needs a new roof. I put on a new roof. Just looking at the rest of my notes here. As far as security, I did have a discussion with neighbors, and I think so I've talked to PD, and it seems clear that there are some issues at Tuthill Park. There's no evidence that it's his house. There's issues at Tuthill Park, and it's, I think, by its nature with being so wooded, so big, that there are some issues. And I think there's things that we could do. Now, I think if it's going to help neighbors, I think it's very easily solved even with this house. If we're going to renovate it, let's do a couple security cameras, make sure we have deadbolts. Maybe we have some motion-activated lights at night. This is not something that's unsolvable. We'd have to abate the asbestos no matter what. It's been talked about the size of the home. Well, that was the charm. That was what it was in the period. And it's got a beautiful deck. As far as if the roof is shot, let's be honest, it's an 800 square foot home. If you have to replace all the sheathing, it's just not going to be that much money. Frankly, we can afford it. We just have to have the will to do it. And it definitely appears that the will is there. But what I do want to make sure is that if we take this out, which I hope we do, we owe it to that structure, we owe it to the city, we owe it to the citizens, we owe it to the neighbors that we have to do something. We can't just take this out and then just let it sit for another year. So whatever we have to do, let's make it happen and give the city direction. So I'm going to support the amendment, and I hope we can save this building. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Councilor. Other discussion? Councilor Selber, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably would reiterate a couple of things that already have been said, but there's obviously some history here. There's a lot of passionate folks wanting it to be saved, and it seems like an effort is underway. I would agree that it's earned maybe a little grace period here to see if a feasible plan can be put together, but I would also agree that we need to put a timeline. So we're not sitting here in a year going, well, we had some sentiment there when everything was cooking, and now next thing you know, it's just kind of faded a bit. So I am probably going to follow up without going into a couple of things that were already said, to just say that I am behind giving these folks a chance to see what they can put together and what we can come up with. And it's not just the refurbishes, it's been talked about too with the safety issues. We need to work through some of that as well. But let's see what we can do. Let's put a timeline on it, since we don't have any other plans for it at the moment, the way I understand it. So I will support that route of action. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Any other discussion on this? Councilor Brecky?
Again, I want to thank you all for coming. I know during these times we never know what to expect, and we still have not, we've talked around a little bit about our ability to accept, Zoom input as well, and whether we should be doing that as COVID continues to plague us. But I know that to a certain extent, some of you have come tonight at risk of your lives just to be here for this. So I know it's important to you. It's important to me. I'm a sucker for history anyway, so I'm probably an easy sale. I'm the one that has to be convinced to tear things down. I want to save everything. So You know, this, when I heard about it at the very beginning, I thought, oh no, you know, oh no. And then hearing the testimony about the historical value to this community, and it being really kind of one of the last standing little farmhouses, which is exactly what I grew up in Dolan, South Dakota. That's exactly the style of house that we had, and that is, you know, kind of a rare thing now, and to have it in its same location really is something special. And then when people point out, you know, the actual history attached to it and how significant it is to our community, that one of the very first settlers, this Howie, one of the very first guys to take advantage of Lincoln's opportunity to claim land and to live on it, you know, that is the first owner of this house. And then it evolved into the Tuthills, who then became very wealthy and did a lot of wonderful things for the city. So I'm really thrilled that the community is coming together, and I'm hoping that there's support in the council. And I will gladly step up to be on, you know, a part of any committee or resolution to help try to put things together between the council and the park department, or in any capacity that I could be useful. I would certainly do that. As I was taking notes as people were testifying, I just want to read back a few things that were really persuasive to me. And one was, and again, I think I tipped my hand when I said I'm a sucker for old things anyway, but, you know, go in, make it purposeful, make it not just fix it up, but make it, reinvent it. I mean, there's no reason why we can't reinvent these days. Put even a bigger deck on it, you know, if the deck is one of the selling points. And then, you know, it was allowed to deteriorate to a point where no homeowner would ever allow it. And I'm not going to point fingers at who or how or what. I mean, the Parks Department's budget's been stretched because we want our streets fixed, and that's one of the simple facts. So I'm not going to point fingers, but that's true. You know, and so it's going to cost us more now because we have to do it all at once, where if we'd have done one thing at a time like a normal homeowner, then that wouldn't have happened. So, and even then, I don't think the cost is extraordinary, like Councilmember Neitzer pointed out. Defer it, give these guys a chance. And this isn't a deferral, this is removing it from there. And I think if there's some committee that could be formed or needs to be formed, they could just work with the Parks Department, or if it needs a resolution, I think what the council members that I'm hearing that think like I do, we're glad to pass that, to actually formalize a group, you know, to you know, task them out to work on this and bring something different forward. And then another thing that was really moving to me was, you know, what's the price you put on history? And I would add this, you know, what's the price you put on history? You know, that this does have a historical value as a structure and as a part of the history of Sioux Falls. Those were all things that, you know, I found very, very persuasive. And I would add, because of my personal history with the city, I would just ask you to just close your eyes for a minute, or just think about it for a minute. You know, how much do you love the Japanese gardens? Do you love the Japanese gardens? They were on the chopping block once. They were the park department came in, they don't always get it right. They came in and they were in a state of serious disrepair, and they just wanted to grade them off and just grade it down, and you'd have just had a bank of grass there. And that was Lila Hunking, and that was back in the 1980s, and she led that charge. She said, how did they get in this state of disrepair? The same question we're asking here. And then once the finger pointing stopped about how we got there, and it got to, well, yeah, we don't really want them to go away. And then when the valuable history was brought forth, which was an extraordinarily valuable history to that as well, they were saved, and they're beautiful. And aren't you all glad they were saved? I am. I think they're fabulous. And then the Parks Department brought up the Overlook Cafe. Does anybody here happen to know that the Overlook Cafe was a gift to the city by NSP? It was a very expensive gift, as it turned out, because the first thing the city discovered after it accepted it was that it had to do asbestos removal. Cost $300,000 to just remove the asbestos. And then another $300,000 to actually finish it off and preserve it and create the structure that sits out there today. And those people who loved it and did it and didn't really know what they were getting into when we got it, because we didn't really ascertain that it had that kind of asbestos problem to actually accepted the gift, may not have done it had they known that in advance. But in a joking fashion afterwards, they said that was a mighty expensive free gift. It was a free building, you know, for the city. But again, you know, is it beautiful there? Is it an asset there? Are you glad we spent too much on it now? Well, you don't get rewarded for these decisions when you make them, but years later, people are glad you save things. And I'm hoping that the rest of my council will feel that way. And just one more in that particular park as well is a little pump house. The little pump house thing that sits on top of the rock out there, that thing was falling down. Let's just take it off, leave that rock up there. And the Telephone Pioneers group came to the city and said, we'll build it. We like doing hands-on projects. And they came in, I think they did it like in a weekend. They had it all planned and staged up. They worked with the planning office and the Parks Department, and they came in and built it. Now, it's looking pretty bad right now, and I'm hoping that it's not going to come to us and say, let's take it off again. I hope, you know, that we'll because somebody needs to crawl out on that rock and probably paint it a little bit, but I'm a little concerned about that. But doesn't it look nice? And the same with the old mill, you know, remnants, you know, should we just doze those down or leave them? This city has a lot of things that are here that aren't about money. We spent too much money for them, but they give us history and they give us character. And collectively, it's one of the things that our city has been known for, that people come to visit here, really appreciate about Sioux Falls, is some of the beautiful buildings, because I can go on and on about the old courthouse museum and the pavilion, and I'm done because I'm just talking about parks tonight, but this is just a small piece of a bigger part of the puzzle, and I hope that my fellow council members will support saving this cute little farmhouse and expanding its use in its place where it's always been.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Councilor Erickson.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, go ahead.
I'll go to Councilor Kiley first, and then Councilor Erickson. Councilor Kiley, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have met with the neighbors and had this discussion, several phone discussions, met on site with some of the neighbors. I have made it very clear my preference is to bring equity throughout our park system, especially in underserved areas such as the Hayward School area in the Northwest. So I have indicated my preference would be to see $120,000 go in some of these underserved areas versus going into a home in a park that serves people quite well as it is, and even without the home. I did ask about a public and private effort on this issue when I first met with the parks personnel and some of the neighbors supporting this project. And it appears significant headway has been made in this area. So based on that, I am okay with supporting this amendment, but I caution that I'm going to set the bar high. It is my desire the private parties raise enough money to complete 100% of the renovations, because as I stated earlier, I want to invest in the underserved areas of our community in an effort to improve services to those with the greatest need. Again, I've set the bar high for those of you wishing to preserve the Tuthill home. So go out and raise funds. I wish you the best, and I'm willing to provide you with the time to achieve your goal. So I will be supporting this amendment this evening. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Councilor. Councilor Erickson?
Thank you. And I know Stacy had to step out for a minute, and I apologize for having a little sidebar conversation with him during your talk, Councilor Brecky. One of the things that I was talking to Stacy about is I think all of us want to see something happen, whether it's some want it torn down, some want it refurbished and renovated. I think what we can all agree on is not having this sit there for another year. I don't want another Band-Aid put on this facility and for it to just sit there year after year after year. We've got to have some remedy, and it's unfortunate it's come down to this, but now the needle needs to be moved. I don't know what that looks like. I'm throwing it out there. Stacy, I'll let you chime in, but I'm throwing it out there to my council colleagues saying, do we want the Parks Board to come back and Don Kearney to come back in 3 months and say, where are you with this situation? Maybe this can be a public-private partnership where the renovations address the safety concerns. It addresses additional things that need to be taken care of and not just, hey, next year we're going to sit here and we're going to have this conversation again and we hope you all did good things. That's not how this works. And so I just challenge us as we're sitting here, do we need to add an amendment that says in 90 days, we need an update. By June 1st, we need I don't know. So Stacy, I know we had a sidebar. If you want to chime in a little bit on this, or Jim, I know I kind of talked to you earlier as well and you two talked. So take it away.
Yeah, and we did discuss that. In fact, some of that prior language is where the section 1 and 3 came in. A slightly different conversation, but you know, two things that leap to mind. One is from a sort of a charter-based balance of power component. I don't think the council has the ability to task the Parks Board or the mayor to say, bring this back in 90 days. I do think there's an urging component to that, and we've discussed some of that language where the council would urge that. There's also the opportunity for two councilors to bring the matter back on a surplus piece. This was brought by the mayor. So you have your own internal timeline.
And so maybe what I will make it very known, for me personally, anybody else chime in, I don't want this to sit there for a year. It looks like an eyesore. It's dangerous. I just want it known that this needs to be addressed sooner than later to making sure that if it is beautification, let's make it better. Jim?
Councilor Erickson, Jim David with the City Council office. As City Attorney Quaistra had mentioned, there was discussion of another amendment or additional amendment. And so if we did fix the clerical error and add a section 3, we could say something to the effect of, the City Council has determined that the Tuthill House is not surplus property and urges the city to immediately commence with alternatives for City Council consideration within 90 days, 6 months, whatever that time frame might be.
Okay. And I don't know how comfortable everybody is. I'd be willing to make that. My desire, I mean, I know it's COVID, I know it's Christmas, I know there's so much going on, but just based on the public input that we've heard here today, there's already $65,000 raised, essentially, or pledged, I will say. And so if it's moved even that much further, I don't want to hinder an amazing project, an amazing thing by saying we haven't given you enough time, but I think it's important for us to know what that time is. We just don't want it looking like an eyesore, and we need to address some additional renovations that need to take place. The other thing is that I want to make sure that all sides are represented on those decisions being made. I appreciate the public input that was against it as well as for it. I think that both sides need to be heard out and address those concerns so it's not just one side or the other. You learn so much from each other when you just pause, listen, and understand where we're coming from. No one's bad in this process. It's just a matter of how can we make this the best little jewel that exists in our community. And so I kind of spoke out of school, and I apologize because I know we're on the amendment for this. And so I guess whoever wants to chime in, we'll vote on this amendment, have a clerical amendment, and then I'll be happy to make that amendment that was discussed.
And if I can chime in on that, since you, one of the things we need to think about is if that's broadening the scope of tonight's dialogue and what's been noticed to the public, if there are other components, that may be an appropriate resolution for next week or so, so that we don't rob people on either side from that opportunity.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying.
All right, other discussion on the current amendment that's on the floor? All right, hearing none, let's call for a vote on the amendment, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson? Yes. Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
All right, the amendment passes 8-0, so we're back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Nitzert, you want to make that cleanup motion here?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to relabel section 3 to read section 2.
Second, Erickson.
All right, motion by Counselor Nitzert on that, seconded by Erickson. Let's take a vote on that. Quick, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yeah.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 8-0, so we're at the main motion as amended.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Counselor
make,
Erickson?
Jim, if you can come back for me and maybe just put up what you had written down. I'd like to make that amendment. Can you read that? My goal would be 90 days as of right now. It doesn't mean that it can't be revisited again, but I do not want to broaden the scope. I want to keep it.
You bet. And I would put this on the overhead, but I have quite a few scribbles on this, and it probably is not ready for prime time. But the way that it's currently written is the City Council has determined that the Tuthill House is not surplus property and urges the city to immediately commence with alternatives for City Council's consideration within 90 days, period.
Mr. Mayor, that would be my motion.
Okay. And is that is that an amendment to the existing ordinance or resolution then?
That would be an amendment. I do have some concerns about the language referring to alternatives and that sort of thing, because that's pretty broad, little ambiguous, but, so that's my concern as we leave it. If there's maybe something to at least narrow that to, we want to revisit this topic, or again, nothing robs anyone up here at the dais from the discretion of bringing this 90 days from now, so.
Okay, I will, Denise, if I could just remove that broadening of the alternatives out of that.
Okay. I'll get a copy of the exact verbiage from.
So just so everyone's aware that it's a 90-day to revisit of the renovations.
Second, Jensen. And I would make it an urging type.
An urging, yes, an
And that's
urging.
section 3?
Yep, that would be section 3.
New section.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion by Counselor Erickson on that, seconded by Counselor Jensen. Is there any discussion on this, Council? Counselor Nitzert?
Okay, so number
Mr.
one.
Mayor?
I'll go to Counselor Nitzert and then to you, Counselor Kylie.
I guess I would like to have clarification from the city attorney as the amendment is proposed. Would you be comfortable with us taking action tonight? I don't want to have to defer this for a week.
Well, my greatest comfort level would be in if there's a new topic that we bring that at whatever time within the discretion of whoever would want to bring it, as opposed to broadening that or covering a different topic tonight. Thus the attempt to kind of narrow it. I understand the intent, which is let's revisit this topic in 90 days. It's a little hard to legislate that in a way under the circumstances. So do have some concern there, but I also understand the intent, which is to keep this moving, thus the urging language, as opposed to anything that would be binding. That probably doesn't answer your question, but that's a pretty good lawyerly answer.
We took out the alternative, so we're basically urging the city to, could this mover maybe just explain what we're doing?
Section 3 will essentially say that we are urging the administration, Parks Department, to revisit this topic in 90 days on the Tuthill House. Whatever that is that they want to discuss and talk about. I think it's very clear that the neighbors that want to raise funds to make those renovations, I think it's very clear that others want to talk about safety and buffer. So anything they want to talk about, they can talk about with the Tuthill House.
Okay, well, I would like to send the message to the administration that I would like the needle to be moved and for us to move forward. So I will support it. Thanks.
All right. Other discussion on that amendment there? Counselor
Mayor?
Counselor Kylie, go ahead.
Thank you. And I would support what Counselor Erickson has stated because a number of us have dealt with homes in a historic district a few years ago. And unfortunately, those homes are in the same condition and actually worse than what they were 2 years ago. No progress has been made. So I don't want to see that happen in this particular case. And I would just like to say that it wasn't the city council that brought this forward. This was brought forward by the city, by the Parks Department, to ask us our decision on whether this should be surplused or not. We've been tasked with voting yes or no on that. And in this case, we're basically saying no, but we would like to revisit it at the appropriate time to allow the private parties additional time to fundraise and to get the legalities put in place, hopefully in cooperation with the Parks Department. So I'm okay with the language, and I'm okay with moving forward with this amendment. Thank you.
All right, other discussion on the amendment here? All right, let's take a vote on it, please.
Councilmember Selber,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We're back to the main motion as amended twice here now. Is there any other amendments?
3 times.
I'm sorry, 3 times. Any other amendments on this? Or any other discussion on this? All right, seeing none, let's take a vote on the main motion as amended.
Councilmember Selber,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 8-0. Item 15, please.
A resolution appointing members of the Districting Commission, sponsors Councilmember Sale and Nitzert.
Councilor Nitzert and Sale, Tom's going to speak to this. Tom, good evening.
Council members and Mayor, thank you. As you know, you're required by charter to appoint a districting commission consisting of 5 members, 1 from each council district, for the purpose of redrawing the council district boundaries. You're required to do this essentially by the middle of next week, so 1 year and 5 months out from the next regular election, which is April 2022. And what is being recommended here are the following people with their respective districts. Bob Timian for the Southwest District, Joseph Kipley for the Southeast District, Mark Millage for the Northwest District, who consequently served on the last districting commission, Barbara Brooks Johnson for the Northeast District, and Tom Hurlbert for the Central District. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Tom. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? All right, Council, you got any questions for Tom on this one?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen to approve. Any discussion here? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor Kiley.
I would like to commend Tom Greco for a job well done. He brought forward several candidates that were very deserving, and it was very difficult to make the decision, and that's due to his efforts. So good job, Tom. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. All right, now we'll call for that vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Item 16.
A resolution establishing reporting structures, pay scales, and evaluations for city council appointed staff, sponsors council members Nitzert and Sale.
Councilor Nitzert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the annual resolution that adopts the cost of living adjustment for our council staff. We simply mirror what the administration does, and in this case, it is 1%, so that will just make that adjustment. So look for your support. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Councilor. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? All right, any questions for Councilor Nitzert on this? Look for a motion on it.
Move approval, Nitzert.
All right.
Second, Sale.
Motion by Nitzert, seconded by Councilor Sale on that one. Any discussion here, Council? All right. Let's
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor Starr.
Thank you. It's not that simple. I just want to make this statement that this was brought up at the last minute. We weren't told about it until the AFSCME deal was done. This just makes all of the employees whole. This was a lack of communication to the council and being told what was going on. We had to come up with this resolution at the last minute to do this, to put it in, but the mayor had already made that decision by sending
and email to all of the affected employees. So to say this is routine and can easily move forward is less than true. Thank you.
All right, other discussion on this? All right, we'll take a vote then, please.
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson, Jensen,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Neitzer.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Counselor, is there any new business tonight? All right, seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to general public input. As a reminder, input during this portion will last no more than 3 minutes per person. And during general public input, the public is welcome to speak on any topic that did not appear earlier in our agenda tonight. So at this time, I'd like to invite people forward for that. Good evening.
Hi, Stephen Ciano again. First of all, public input, this is quite a problem to have to wait this long. And as I've said before, I have difficulty getting to meetings anyway, and I think I should be given extra special due to my needs as a disabled veteran. But I don't get no respect, I guess, huh? Well, also I want to say something about viruses and vaccines. It's my understanding, having looked into it back in the 80s, that vaccines, the actual science behind it is flawed because especially like the smallpox and polio have died off naturally, and yet people who made money off vaccines have taken credit where it was not due. And now we have people promoting billions of dollars going into promoting what could be just water, or it could be a chip, or it could be something that's going to be harmful to people. And it's being sold to us despite the science and the historical facts relative to it. I heard someone speaking on the radio last night. Name is Jonathan Emord, and he's an attorney who successfully has sued the FDA and other government entities. He's one I'm going to have to look into. I've told you about Dr. Mendelsohn and Dr. Walbot. Mendelsohn made the point that doctors are held as priests in people's eyes, and it is not due them, and a lot of medical care is potentially harmful. And he was a regular doctor, yes. And there's some things I didn't say about the mask mandate. Well, you got somebody did a robbery. It was right there on camera. Could see the person plain. They were masked. Well, maybe we should ban the masks. I think that'd be better. And this tyrannical, like, what do we got to wear the Habib?
We covered the mask mandate, Stephen, on another item, so keep going.
Yeah, well, I left it out earlier, sorry. So, also, a lot of people are around here against people being on a public dole. That generally refers to others and not public officers, and I say, let's apply it to public officers and hold people accountable. Let's start prosecuting, and why don't one of you people say, hey, this is a good idea,
Thanks,
and
Stephen.
I volunteer.
Anyone else this evening? Come on forward.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm Phyllis Ahrens, and I live in southeast Sioux Falls. I'm here this evening to introduce the community to a new nonprofit organization serving Sioux Falls and the surrounding communities. Empire Mental Health Support formed earlier this year to fill the void after NAMI South Dakota had NAMI Sioux Falls dissolved. Affiliates have also dissolved in Yankton and Sturgis. We know that tens of thousands of citizens in the viewing area are directly impacted by mental illness diagnoses. My guess is that the number will grow exponentially as the after effects of the pandemic continue. Empire Mental Health Support is currently offering 2 virtual support groups every week for people who live with a mental illness diagnosis and 1 a week for their family members. Groups will be held in person once it is safe to do so. Empire Mental Health Support recently completed its 2021 strategic plan to set the roadmap for making a difference. We will focus on increasing the number of support groups each week, as well as working with community partners to collaboratively address the growing mental health needs in our area. If you or someone you love is struggling with mental health problems, please reach out for help. Early intervention makes for a much brighter outcome. If you just want to talk to someone who truly understands, you can give us a call at 359-0995. You can also find Empire Mental Health Support on the internet and Facebook. Thank you for this opportunity, and please take care of your mental health during this holiday season.
All right, thanks, Phyllis. Good evening.
Good evening. Amy Willis. And Mr. Mayor and council members, first of all, I do want to apologize for raising my voice earlier. And I want to thank you for the work that you do that is honest and good for Sioux Falls and the citizens therein. I do appreciate your patience in listening to the citizens. Now, I do want to bring up another topic here, being that the City Council has been concerned about the health and welfare of our people of Sioux Falls, and you have imposed on us a mask ordinance. I hereby request that the council consider a more dangerous and serious threat and hazard to our health. This is the danger of 5G. There is what's called a 5G syndrome and a 5G flu. The 5G syndrome is much more serious medical ailment than the 5G flu. The 5G syndrome represents a much more extensive list of severe symptoms, some of which are life-threatening. However, as we have witnessed, the 5G flu can also kill you fast, as the COVID. The 5G syndrome, that is a quiet killer because of how many symptoms will occur completely under the radar over years. Also, many of those symptoms will be routinely misinterpreted as other diseases by the medical establishment. There are those who suffer from both 5G flu and early onset 5G syndrome, and this is all over the world. In general, the 5G flu is more of an acute illness, whereas 5G syndrome is a long-term chronic disease. They mutually support and feed off each other, which is what makes them so dangerous and increasingly fatal. The extraordinarily reinfection rates of COVID-19, also known as a coronavirus bioweapon triggering a 5G flu, offers compelling circumstantial evidence that it's really an electromagnetic radiation-driven disease more than a bioengineered coronavirus, although it's really both cofactors working together to turbocharge each other. Truly, the inexplicable reinfection rates tell the hidden backstory about this swiftly unfolding pandemic. So I do ask that you would consider the health risks of 5G and to eliminate it from Sioux Falls. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy. Anyone else this evening for general public input? Start the clock. He's on the clock.
Greetings. I'm David Zokaitis, and when we talked earlier tonight about parks, and so this kind of relates to that. It's nature and what value it has to us as humans. When I come here, I usually finish off my little talk with a landscape because it's really nice, and I say things like, you know, it's good to be nice to other people and enjoy nature, but what's the science behind this? Turns out I found some. So here's an article in Scientific Reports that says if you spend 2 hours a week in nature, that your well-being increases and your health also increases. Pretty cool to see that kind of stuff. Here's part of the abstract. It says that if you spend time in natural environments, it helps your health and well-being. And there's another quote. Apparently 2 hours is a good time to spend in nature if you really want to achieve some positive benefits. Oh, and you have to read this introduction. It's awesome. All those numbers there are more references that they quote in their article. Apparently, if you get more time in nature, your probability of cardiovascular disease goes down. Same for obesity and diabetes, mental distress, even mortality. Seems like being in nature is a bit of a cure-all. The discussion, again, a lot of marvelous points there. Apparently, if you spend more time in nature, it's almost as good as getting a pay raise or working out more. Really quite magical. Thank you, sir. Found another reference, another scientific source that says if you have more biological diversity in your environment, you're likewise happier. It turns out that if you have more biological diversity, again, it's like getting a pay raise. Pretty cool. And here's a marvelous summary. The last sentence of the summary is most significant. It says that if you can invest in nature, you're actually investing in human well-being. Again, pretty cool. So, of course, my recommendation is that we should do this. We should change our lives and our cities so that we have more nature everywhere, and then we'll have happier people. Here's a nice landscape I took when we had a little bit of chilly weather about a month ago. It's a happy little furry friend of mine having a good time out in the woods. And good evening, everybody.
All right, thank you. Anyone else tonight for general public input?
Tim Stenga. First, I want to thank all the people that came to this meeting. It was one of the better meetings we've ever had. I want to get on to panhandling. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Haven't heard anything since. What's being done? What has been done? Because on Cliff Avenue, or 10th Street coming over the interstate, you have lineup of people that stand. And if these people aren't getting any money, they get a little growly. They beat up on the signs. We got one sign that's about ready to fall down. I sit and watch that guy every day shake it because he's not getting any money. We've got trash. At every single part of that intersection, we have trash. They don't have to pick it up. Why is that? Well, we have a lot of other things in Sioux Falls to worry about too. We have ordinances that we don't enforce. We have neighborhoods that are going down the tubes. And I sit and watch my neighborhood, and I've tried to clean up my neighborhood, but there's so much more to do because every time you try to clean up one house, you get 10 houses that look just as bad as the one you're turning in. When is it? Again, I have addressed this. We have the health department go look at one thing, and there's 2 or 3 houses next to that. Oh, that's not my job. I got to give it to somebody else. Or they overlook it and say, well, oh, that's not my job. That's not what was turned in. When are we going to get people to work together in this city? At my job, I've got to know every aspect of the job, not only that I do, but everybody else does. Because why? Because I have to step in. Why doesn't the city have to do that? We have a health department, and we have everybody else that goes out and looks at houses. Why can't we work together and realize that either you're going to turn something in, you're going to do your job, plus you're going to see something next door, and say, hey, I've got to get a hold of this department or get it done, or that department should be able, the health department should be able to take care of it right there. We got neighborhoods that are going downhill. I have heard that within 2 weeks, we are going to get rid of one house on Cliff Avenue. That has been haunting the Whittier neighborhood for years and years. And the way it sounds, we hopefully within 2 weeks, the citizens of Whittier neighborhood are finally going to be heard. That has been a drug house that has been a thorn in the city for I don't know how many years. We've wasted a lot of money going there.
Thanks, Tim.
And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, hello, I'm Catherine Riffle. I'm here again for the advocacy for the people downtown here or anywhere else in our city here, state, wherever it applies. I also am with paper about NAMI connections and all, but did you know that Senator Grassley of NAMI is backed by some of the biggest pharmaceuticals? Again, pushes drugs and everything. I'm still concerned at the $165 million that's been mislaid by the Homeless Coalition in the last 10 years. Nothing's been said about that. Again, nothing's been said about Dugard taking off with, what was it, $800 billion? Nobody said a word about it. But we get all these new areas, north, south, east, and west, all these new buildings and everything, just building them up like crazy out there in Tornado Alley. And you know, some of the buildings are so flimsy with material that you really don't think that you're going to survive something like that. Look what it did to the trees and the water. The city has been relocating the water. They'll do everything to make up money and get money, but they won't take care of their own citizens. We have people down here in town that need your help. They need to be able to get into a home, an apartment. For all the money that's been abused and wasted, I've been out there picking people up, and I'm not going to stop saying it. I'm the one picking them up dead under the bridges, down along the park, Tuthill even. There's plenty of places I've been, but I don't see not one of you all walking by my side. But nobody will jump to the chance to make things right, to fix it. They just want to downgrade everybody. There's people down there downtown that got certificates. You have no idea how much talent is down there. So I'm believing, and I'm going to keep pushing for prosecuting people and doctors and anybody that's making danger by mispracticing your seat. So, as I said before, I intend to be holding city council and county commissioners, all but roads and codes, and I will find a way to continue getting everybody prosecuted if that's what I have to do. I'm one person. But I have been making a lot of headway, and I think people ought to be held accountable. If you're going to allow these people to die in an unhuman situation, why don't you go try it? You don't like it, but neither do I. And I do walk in the faith and the spirit of the Holy Spirit, and I do trust, and if I didn't, I wouldn't be here this long. And I've been doing it for 28 and a half years here in Sioux Falls, so something's got to give. Y'all got to keep hiding. You got to do something. They're your citizens.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for general public input tonight? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved, Jensen.
All right.
Second, Brecky.
Motion by Jensen, seconded by Councilor Selberg. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Have a good night.